there is a thought so quiet, so strange, that most minds push it away the moment it appears. A thought that does not try to challenge science, only to step outside it, the way a shadow steps outside the object casting it. The thought begins like this: what if the universe is not the whole of existence? What if it is only a layer, the smallest layer inside something far larger than itself? Not a parallel universe, not a multiverse bubble, but a structural layer, a sheet of reality, thin and vibrating, like the skin of a drum stretched across a void we cannot measure. Imagine, looking at a closed hand, you see only the surface, the fold, the tint of skin, the line of light along the knuckles. But beneath it are bones, tendons, vessels, muscles, a structured world hidden from the surface, yet shaping every curve you see. Now, imagine the universe as that surface, a luminous skin surrounding a far deeper architecture. And all our physics, all our equations, all our constants are simply the rules that operate on the skin, not inside the hand itself. Every photon we measure, every particle we name, every galaxy we map, all of them could be part of the same thin boundary. And what lies beneath might not resemble anything we have words for. The universe has always been described as everything, not because we proved it, but because we never saw beyond its edges. We never had the tools to look behind the curtain. And yet, when you stare long enough into the cosmic background, into the quiet glow left over from the earliest moments, there is a peculiar stillness there, as if the light is trying to tell us it came through something, as if our universe has a texture the laws of physics pretend not to see. Before we dive deeper, let me invite you to settle in, slower, quieter. You're listening to Whispers of the Universe, and if you're kind enough to leave a small gesture of support, a like, a share, a subscription, it helps this gentle place stay alive in a world that rarely slows down for anything at all. Now, breathe once, softly. Let's step back into that thought. The idea of a layered universe is older than modern physics. Ancient texts hinted at levels of creation, planes of being, spheres within spheres. But ancient words are too metaphorical to be trusted. Modern science, however, has begun to see hints of something similar, not through mysticism, but through patterns. Patterns that repeat, patterns that shouldn't repeat, patterns that appear at scales too far apart to influence each other. Atoms orbit around nuclei, planets orbit around stars, stars orbit around galactic centers, galaxies orbit within clusters, clusters form filaments stretching across the observable universe. It is a cosmic echo, a scaffolding repeating itself. But repetition is not the mystery. Repetition with distortion is. At each level, the pattern bends differently. At each level, there is a shift, a subtle dissonance, as if each scale is only an approximation, a projected shadow of a structure that lives elsewhere, like reflections in a hall of mirrors, where each reflection carries a little more distortion until the original shape becomes unrecognizable. Physicists call this self-similarity fractality, but fractality itself is not the true oddity. The true oddity is the break the places where patterns should continue, but don't. Why do some particles behave like miniature galaxies, yet others refuse the analogy entirely? Why does gravity scale so differently from every other force? Why does the cosmic web resemble a neural network more than a collection of planets? Why do the largest voids in the universe look eerily similar to the smallest quantum fluctuations? It is almost as if the pattern is not originating in the universe, but passing through it, as if our universe is a surface upon which deeper structures cast their shadows. Let me give you an image. Picture a pond at night. You cannot see the creatures swimming beneath the water, but you can see ripples on the surface. The ripples reveal the hidden movements below, even though the creatures themselves remain invisible. Now, imagine the universe as the surface of that pond. The ripples are everything we measure: particles, fields, forces, galaxies. The creatures beneath if the analogy holds, would be the deeper layers of existence. But the key is this: a ripple on the surface cannot reveal the shape of what moves below it. It can only reveal the effect. The effect is all our science has ever seen. There is a moment in cosmology that scientists rarely talk about in public, because it makes the universe look less complete, less clean than textbooks pretend. When we analyze the background radiation from the early universe, the oldest light we can detect, it carries a tiny signature that doesn't fit within any known model: a tilt, a curve, a distortion that no process within the universe can explain. Some call it noise, some call it statistical anomaly, some call it a computational artifact. But there is a growing minority, quiet, cautious, who believe it might be an imprint, a fingerprint pressed from the outside. If the universe is a layer, then every point of contact with the layer above it would leave a trace. And we have found traces. Microwave anisotropies with no origin, temperature deviations too large to be random, axis alignments stretching across billions of light-years alignments that have no right to exist within a universe that expands uniformly. Patterns that look as if something large, something unimaginable, brushed against the entire cosmic sheet. The question becomes inevitable. If the universe is a layer, how thick is it? How far does it extend? And what is on the other side? Imagine the cosmic horizon not as the edge of space, but as the edge of perception, not the wall of the universe, but the limit of what can vibrate within our layer. Beyond that, perhaps nothing exists as we understand existence. Perhaps everything exists in ways we cannot yet describe. Think of yourself standing in a room with one window. You see the world only through the window, not realizing the room has other walls, a ceiling, a floor. The window is your universe. The rest is the architecture of a larger space. We have been staring through a cosmic window, believing it was the entirety of reality. But the frame is beginning to show. And if there is a frame, there must be a room. A room that touches our universe at its boundaries. Not spatial boundaries, but conceptual ones. The limits of time, the limits of energy, the limits of measurability. Where physics breaks, the larger structure begins. You can feel this truth in the way cosmology whispers to itself. Physics is incomplete not because we lack precision, but because we might be looking at the wrong scale. Animals trapped in a cave do not describe the forest above. Fish swimming beneath waves do not describe the wind across the surface. We, inside our layer, cannot yet describe what presses against it, but the distortions tell us something is there, something vast, something structured, something coherent, something older than our universe, something that has been touching us gently, quietly, without ever revealing its face. And if the universe is truly a layer inside a larger architecture, then we must ask the next question, a question that pulls us into the second chapter. If our universe is only a distorted reflection, what original structure is casting the pattern we see? The answer begins with the mirrors themselves. Patterns rule the universe, not objects. Objects come and go. Patterns persist. And the deeper you look into the fabric of reality, the more a strange truth begins to emerge. Everything we see might be an imitation of something that exists elsewhere. Not a perfect imitation, a distorted one, like a reflection on rippling water, where the image is recognizable, yet subtly wrong. Take a moment and imagine the universe not as a collection of things, but as a series of shapes repeating themselves across scales. Repeating, bending, shifting, repeating, bending, shifting. Atoms mimic galaxies. Electrons mimic planets. Filaments of dark matter mimic neural pathways inside a sleeping brain. Symmetry, asymmetry, clustering, expansion. They dance in cycles that echo through the cosmos with a rhythm so familiar it feels as though we have seen it before, somewhere beyond memory. And perhaps we have, because repetition across scales is not normal. Not at this magnitude, Not at this complexity. Not across distances so large they defy causality. For a long time, physics called these repetitions coincidences. But coincidences fade with measurement. Patterns do not. Let me paint you an image. Imagine standing inside a mirrored corridor. Each wall reflects your form, but the reflections are not the same. One stretches you tall, one compresses you wide, another fractures your outline into 100 pieces. None of them show the real you-only versions, distorted again and again by the nature of each mirror. Now imagine that corridor is not made of mirrors, but of layers of existence. Each layer produces reflections of a deeper structure, echoes, impressions, shadows, some clearer, some twisted, some almost broken. Our universe may be one of the outermost reflections, and what we call physics may simply be the rules that govern how reflections behave when projected onto our layer. This is why atoms resemble solar systems, yet behave differently. It is why galaxies form filaments, like neurons, yet follow no biological logic. It is why the large-scale structure of the universe looks so much like the structure of the human brain, though the two operate under entirely different laws. In every mirrored corridor, no reflection is the original. Every reflection is just a bent copy. The question becomes, what, then, is the original shape? Before we approach that, we need to understand the nature of distortion. In physics, distortion is not just visual, it is structural. It appears when something passes through a medium that cannot hold its full form, like a deep voice passing through a thin wall, like a shadow cast on a curved surface, like a gravitational wave crossing sparse matter. When a higher structure communicates with a lower one, distortion is inevitable. Quantum mechanics is full of distortions. So is cosmology. So is the geometry of space-time. Let's take a familiar example: orbits. Planets orbit stars in ellipses. Electrons orbit nuclei in probability clouds. Stars orbit galactic centers in spirals. Galaxies orbit within the cosmic web. These orbits follow similar patterns: gravitational, electromagnetic, probabilistic, yet none of them behave exactly the same. It is as if each is trying to recreate a motion it does not fully remember, a motion from a deeper layer. Physicists once joked about this similarity. Then they started measuring. The more precisely we measured, the more the patterns held, and the more the distortions sharpened. Something is trying to repeat itself across scales, but our universe only receives a fraction of the signal. Consider the periodic table. Patterns. Consider the arrangement of galaxies. Patterns. Consider the clustering of dark matter. Patterns. Scale them up or down, and they echo each other, but never perfectly, like a melody played through different instruments, each carrying the theme, but altering the sound. If our universe is a reflection, then the distortions are not flaws. They are fingerprints. Fingerprints of the layer above us. There is another strange clue, one stranger than fractals, stranger than cosmic webs, stranger than quantum mimicry. It is the alignment. Across billions of light years, certain axes of the universe line up as though following an instruction: the spin of galaxies, the orientation of clusters, the flow of matter, patterns in the cosmic microwave background. Science calls one of them the axis of evil, not because it is malevolent, but because it disobeys the rules. It should not exist. It should not align. It should not stretch across the entire sky like a cosmic thread pulled tight from outside. But it does. And if something aligns the universe at that scale, it cannot be inside the universe. It must be pressing from beyond it. There is another mirror, the mirror of form. Atoms are mostly empty space. So are stars. So are galaxies. So is the entire universe. Everything is structure around emptiness. Yet emptiness is not nothing. It is an active medium, vibrating, shimmering, trembling at scales we have not yet resolved. Why would emptiness behave this way unless it were shaped, influenced, molded by a deeper form? Take the cosmic web. It spreads across space like a vast network of highways, Nodes of matter, tunnels of dark energy, threads of gravitational tension. If you shrink it down, it resembles the architecture of a cortical brain. Even the distribution ratios of nodes to voids match. Is it coincidence? Is it mathematics? Is it universality of form? Or is it a projection, a distorted image of something structured that exists in a higher layer? Imagine a being two-dimensional trying to understand a three-dimensional object. A sphere passing through its plane becomes a dot, then a circle, then a dot again. The 2D being sees only slices, distorted sections of a greater shape. We might be that 2D being. Our physics might be describing slices of a higher structure. Now, let's turn to the most intriguing clue of all: the broken symmetries. In particle physics, symmetries break in ways that should not be possible if the universe were a self-contained system. The Higgs field appears out of nowhere. Mass emerges from interactions that seem incomplete. The weak force violates mirror symmetry. Quantum spin defies classical geometry. These are not signs of chaos. They are signs of projection. A 3D object projected onto a 2D plane always breaks certain symmetries. It cannot help it. The act of projection misrepresents its true structure. Our universe breaks symmetries at exactly the places where a projection would deform. It is as if something is being translated, reduced, simplified, like a complex sculpture pressed into wet clay. The clay cannot capture the full detail, so it distorts it. But the imprint remains. The imprint is what we study. The imprint is what we call physics. Physics, then, might not be the laws of reality. Physics might be the laws of the projection. The reflection in the mirror behaves according to rules the original does not share. Once you see the universe this way, as a hall of distorted mirrors, every anomaly begins to make sense. Gravity's weakness, quantum randomness, cosmic alignments, fractal structures, holographic principles, dimensional limits. None of them are problems. They are signals. Signals that the original shape is somewhere above our layer, unreachable, but undeniably present. And if distortions exist, then the next step is inevitable. Where do the distortions break completely? Because where a pattern breaks is where the truth reveals itself. And that leads us into the next quiet descent, a place where the reflections blur too strongly to ignore, a place where the universe starts slipping out of its own shape. A place where the mirror does not distort, it shatters. The places where the universe fractures are not where most people expect them to be. They are not in the collapse of stars, nor in the hearts of black holes, nor at the edges of cosmic voids. Those are dramatic scenes, yes, but not the true breakpoints. The real fractures are smaller, quieter, almost invisible. They hide in transitions, in thresholds, in the boundary moments, where one kind of order gives way to another, where the rules hesitate, then flicker, and then just for a heartbeat stop knowing what they are supposed to be. Physicists call these places singularities, but the word is misleading. A singularity is not just a point of infinite density. It is a point where the mathematics describing our universe politely refuses to continue. An equation breaks, a curve diverges, a constant stops being constant, a field collapses into undefined. These are not failures of math. They are fractures in the mirror. A mirror can distort a shape only so far. At some angle, at some pressure, at some vibration, the reflection stops behaving like the object behind it. It becomes a smear, a blur, a streak of broken geometry. Our universe has these streaks. Let your mind wander into one of them, the Planck scale. It is so small that it makes atoms look like galaxies, a distance where space stops acting like space, a moment where time stops behaving like time. Below the Planck length, the universe becomes impossible, not because nothing exists there, but because our version of existence cannot describe it. Imagine a painting. Zoom in close enough, and the image dissolves into brushstrokes, then pigments, then fibers of canvas. The painting is still there, but its meaning no longer lives at that scale. Our universe dissolves the same way. Particles blur into fields. Fields blur into uncertainties. Uncertainties blur into something even less definable, until the entire concept of location evaporates. We are staring at a boundary, not the bottom of reality, but the end of our layer's ability to represent what lies beneath. Then there are the breakpoints on the opposite end, cosmic voids stretching across unimaginable distances. Vast, silent expanses with almost no matter at all. Not empty. Emptiness does not exist, but so loose, so thin, so unformed that physics itself begins to lose stability. In these voids, light travels differently. Distances behave oddly. Galaxies at their edges accelerate in ways our equations struggle to explain. It's as though the fabric is thinning, as though our layer is stretched too wide in these places, revealing the pressure of something beyond pushing, pulling, altering the geometry. When a bubble thins, the surface tension changes. When a membrane is drawn too far, its behavior becomes fragile. When a layer is stressed, it starts to show the outline of whatever is beneath it. Cosmic voids may be the places where the deeper structure of existence presses closest to us. But the true fracture, the most intimate one, is inside every particle. Enter the wave function. It is the most mysterious entity in physics, a mathematical cloud describing all possible states of a particle simultaneously. Not a solid, not a point, not a thing. A cloud of potential. When you measure a particle, that cloud collapses into a single state. But how it collapses, why it collapses, what mechanism guides that collapse, no equation can answer. There are theories, yes, many worlds, hidden variables, quantum decoherence, pilot waves, collapse models. But all of them are attempts to patch a fracture. None of them explain the break. And the break is this. The wave function is not a property of our universe. It is a translation of something from outside our universe being forced into the limited language of our layer. Pretend you try to describe a four-dimensional object using only two-dimensional words. The description will look like contradictions, sudden jumps, undefined edges, split states, overlapping forms, shapes that behave impossibly because they are not native to your plane. Quantum behavior is the artifact of forcing higher dimensional information through a lower dimensional filter, a fragment from a deeper layer struggling to perform within ours. That is why the wave function breaks at the moment of measurement. That is the fracture. That is the place where the mirror cannot hold the reflection. And every fracture in physics points in the same direction, downward, deeper, into a layer that does not share our rules. Let's drift further into the boundaries. Consider the constants of nature, numbers so fundamental that if they changed even slightly, the universe would collapse into chaos. Gravity, electron charge, speed of light, Planck constant. We call them constants because they do not drift within our layer. But constants have a strange habit of looking stable, when they are only stable relative to the environment that holds them. Inside a bubble, pressure feels uniform. But as soon as you step outside the bubble, that uniformity disappears. The pressure was not absolute, it was conditional. In the same way, constants are the pressure conditions of our layer. They hold steady only because our layer is held steady. But if the layer is part of a larger structure, then those constants may simply be the visible projection of deeper forces we have not yet touched. Press a finger into a membrane, and its tension shifts. Press from the other side, and the membrane distorts again, subtly, but measurably. Some cosmologists believe we have already seen such distortions. Evidence, hints, anomalies we do not yet know how to classify. The fine structure constant may have drifted slightly in early cosmic epochs. Dark energy may have changed its density over time. The cosmic web may curve faintly toward regions beyond the observable universe. All these fractures whisper the same truth. Our layer is not isolated. It is nudged, pressed, influenced, shaped by a deeper environment. Imagine a drumhead stretched over a chamber. Strike the chamber from the inside, and the drumhead vibrates. Strike the chamber from the outside, and the drumhead vibrates. From the perspective of someone living on the drumhead, both sets of vibrations look identical. They could not tell which came from within and which came from beyond. We may be listening to vibrations pressed from beyond the cosmic skin. Now breathe softly, because the thought becomes heavier. Every fracture we have followed suggests that the universe is not breaking down. It is trying to show us something beyond its own domain. It is trying to show us the original structure. What would such a structure look like? Would it resemble the cosmic web, the neural brain, the lattice of quantum fields? Or would it be something we do not yet have the language to describe? Before we glimpse it, we must confront one final break, the fracture, where our physics gives up entirely, where the patterns not only distort but collapse. A boundary where this universe stops being enough, where the reflection no longer hides the original, where the shape pressing from the deeper layer begins to outline itself and pulls us quietly into the next descent. The collapse of patterns begins in a place so subtle that most equations pretend not to notice it. A place where the universe stops behaving like a reflection and begins behaving like something unsettled, unfinished, as though the layer itself is trembling against its own boundaries. To understand this trembling, imagine a sheet of metal being struck from beneath. Each strike creates a vibration on the surface. Most vibrations are harmonious, predictable, shaped by the material and by the force that created them. But every so often, a vibration appears that does not belong, a jagged ripple, a distortion the sheet cannot reproduce cleanly. That jagged ripple is the signature of something the layer cannot translate. Our universe produces jagged ripples. You see them in the early seconds after the Big Bang, where the energy density fluctuates beyond anything classical physics allows. You see them in the abrupt asymmetries of matter and antimatter, where the balance should have been perfect but was mysteriously violated. You see them in dark matter halos, shaped like twisted shells, as if responding to a force that does not exist inside our universe. And the most striking ripples, the ones that betray the deepest break, live inside black holes. A black hole is not a region of infinite gravity. It is a region where the translation between layers fails. Space collapses not because gravity is strong, but because the geometry describing our layer ceases to be valid. It folds, wrinkles, compresses, tangles like lines on a map, being forced to represent a terrain with too many dimensions. The singularity is not a point. It is a failure of representation, a place where our universe cannot maintain its role as a mirror. Physicists struggle with this idea because mathematics insists on describing the singularity as undefined. But undefined does not mean non-existent. Undefined means the rules of the layer have reached their limit. The true structure behind the collapse remains hidden, not because it is beyond physics, but because physics operates only on the surface level projection. Consider this. If a 2D being witnessed a sphere passing through its plane, the sphere would appear to them as a circle, growing and shrinking. At the moment the circle reaches its smallest point, the 2D being might declare the event undefined, but the sphere continues to exist outside the plane, unchanged. This is how a black hole appears to us, a distortion that our layer cannot properly interpret, a deeper shape that does not compress, only our reflection of it does. The strange part is this: information that crosses the event horizon does not disappear. It becomes encoded in the surface, encoded, flattened, projected onto the boundary, as though the universe is telling us, quietly but unmistakably, everything inside is actually on the surface. And if everything is on the surface, then the surface is not a boundary, it is the interface, the skin of our layer, the place where deeper structures make contact. Let that thought settle slowly like dust falling through a beam of late-night light. If the universe is a surface, then nothing inside it is truly three-dimensional. 3 dimensions are simply how our layer displays information from a higher dimensional structure. This explains the fractures. This explains the distortions. This explains the persistent tensions that physics calls paradoxes, the misbehavior of particles, the mismatch of cosmological scales, the strange harmony of structures separated by billions of light years, the eerie alignments across axes that should not align, the jittery randomness of quantum events. All of it is the same phenomenon expressed differently. Our layer struggling to recreate something it cannot fully contain. Think again of the distorted mirror. If you tilt the mirror slightly, the reflection warps. Tilt it further, and the reflected shape breaks apart. Tilt it too far, and the reflection disappears entirely. The universe exhibits each of these stages. Symmetry holds across scales. Then it distorts. Then it corrupts. Then it breaks. And in the break, we glimpse the outline of something else. Something larger than large. Something beneath the skin of reality. Listen to the heart of the universe in gravitational waves. Not the loud waves from colliding black holes, those are surface storms, nothing more. I mean the faint waves, the low hums, the long wavelength ripples that drift across billions of light years. They do not match any known source. They arrive from all directions. They pulse with a rhythm too slow, too uniform, too deliberate to be chaotic. These waves are not created inside our universe. They are pressed into our universe, pressed from the layer beneath. The fractures amplify them like loose joints in an old wooden house, amplifying the knock of something shifting in the foundation. These waves do not belong to our cosmic layer. They belong to the structure behind it. Think of it this way. If you place your hand against a thin wall, the wall vibrates softly. If someone on the other side presses back, the wall vibrates differently, not randomly, but with a specific imprint of their movements. Our universe vibrates with an imprint, a pattern, a signature, a steady pressure from something deeper, something that does not behave like space or time or matter as we know them. Move now from gravitational waves to the quiet geometry of cosmic expansion. Space expands in a uniform way, yet the expansion fluctuates slightly, bending toward directions that make no astrophysical sense. The universe is not expanding like a balloon, it is expanding like a membrane, being stretched unevenly by forces from beyond its own surface. Not torn, not ruptured, just nudged. The nudges leave trails, and those trails form the cracks, the regions where physics strains too hard to maintain consistency. These cracks appear in the distribution of galaxy clusters, in the temperature variations of the cosmic background, in the unexpected flows of matter across billions of light years, in the mysterious dipole alignments, in the acceleration patterns that cannot be caused by dark energy alone. Every anomaly whispers the same suggestion. We are not observing a closed system. We are observing a layer interacting with a layer above it. And the deepest fractures, the ones that cut through the very logic of existence, originate not from the edges of the universe, but from its foundational rule set. The rule set is where the mirror distorts most severely. Physics is not broken. Physics is incomplete because it is only the physics of the projection. Think of software running on a screen. The screen displays images, shapes, colors, but it never shows the circuitry beneath. The circuitry determines the behavior of the images, yet the images cannot reveal the circuitry. At most, they flicker when the circuitry is pushed beyond capacity. The flicker is the fracture. In our universe, the flicker happens in 3 places. In the smallest scales, where quantum behavior tears continuity apart. In the largest scales, where cosmic flows violate homogeneity. And in the densest regions, where gravity twists geometry beyond recognition. 3 different domains, one underlying cause, a deeper structure pressing through the layer. The question that follows is unavoidable. If the universe fractures in these precise ways, then what shape is trying to emerge behind the reflection? A shape that produces repeating patterns across scales, yet distorts them differently in each domain. A shape with dimensions that do not translate neatly into our own. A shape whose influence ripples like vibrations from beneath the floorboards of existence. We cannot see this shape directly, but fractures reveal outlines, cracks reveal pressure, distortions reveal origin. And as the fractures deepen from Planck scales to cosmic voids to black holes, the outline grows clearer, not in form, but in presence. Something beneath the universe is pushing against the mirror, gently, consistently, unmistakably. And if the distortions trace the imprint of a deeper architecture, then the next step is to follow them backward from the reflection to the original, into the deeper framework the universe is built upon, into the layer beneath our layer, into the structure that shapes the patterns we misinterpret as fundamental, into the architecture we are only now beginning to sense, a structure that has been pressing through the fractures all along. If you follow the fractures long enough, they begin to converge. Three kinds of breaks: the quantum, the cosmic, the gravitational, all pointing in the same direction, like three rivers flowing toward a single unseen sea. The convergence is subtle at first, a stray similarity in equations meant for different scales, an unexpected relationship between randomness and structure, a faint echo of cosmological behavior inside microscopic processes. Then the patterns intensify, and suddenly the universe's fractures, scattered like cracks across a pane of glass, begin to outline a deeper form. This form is not a place, not a dimension, not a parallel world. It is a structure the universe is stretched across, like skin on a frame. To understand it, imagine a drumhead, again stretched tight, shimmering under tension. Every tone the drum makes is shaped not by the skin, but by the frame that holds the skin in place. Change the frame, change the tone, change the tension, change the resonance. Our universe has a resonance, a hum, a mode of vibration. Cosmic background radiation is one echo of that hum. The slow rhythm of gravitational waves is another. The distribution of galaxies is the third. Quantum fluctuations form the fourth. Four harmonics, a chord of existence. What holds these harmonics together is the frame beneath the universe, a frame we cannot see, cannot measure, but continuously feel through distortions. Everything we call law may simply be the harmony allowed by this frame. Gravity's weakness, mass's emergence, space's expansion, quantum indeterminacy, symmetry breaking, cosmic anisotropies. They are not independent mysteries. They are different expressions of the same underlying constraint, the constraint of the frame. Now imagine reaching toward this invisible frame softly, cautiously, not with hands, but with questions. What could possibly underlie the entire universe? What structure could be so vast that our cosmic web, spanning billions of light years, would be merely a local texture upon it? To approach this, we look not outward, but inward. Start with a simple observation. Structures in nature repeat across scales, not because the universe copies itself, but because the rules shaping one scale resemble the rules shaping another. But repetition becomes eerie when the rules appear to originate outside the system entirely. In biology, fractal branching emerges because life optimizes flow. In geology, fractal coastlines form because erosion distributes energy efficiently. In fluids, turbulence cascades across scales due to energy dissipation. Each fractal has a cause. Yet in the universe, fractals stretch far beyond any cause that fits within its own laws. The cosmic web and microscopic networks are not connected by any known mechanism, unless both are projections of a deeper structure. Let this thought settle. We might be witnessing two shadows cast by a single form, one small, one large, distorted differently by the geometry of our layer, like a candle casting two different silhouettes on two different walls. Now look again at the universe's largest structures. The cosmic web is not randomly shaped. It organizes into nodes, filaments, and voids, the same pattern produced by physical systems, minimizing or distributing pressure under tension. A frame under tension. The cosmic web might not be a structure of matter alone. It might be the visible deformation of the cosmic skin due to the deeper frame pressing beneath it. The filaments are tension lines. The voids are slack regions. The clusters are anchor points. Every large-scale pattern becomes an equation for the frame. Shift now to the quantum scale. In quantum mechanics, particles behave like oscillations, not objects, not waves, but resonances inside a boundary. The boundary defines what resonances are allowed. If the universe is a skin stretched on a frame, then quantum states are simply allowed vibration modes, the notes the skin can play. But here is the key. Quantum randomness appears only because the frame is not perfectly uniform. Tiny imperfections, subtle, invisible curves in the underlying structure become statistical probabilities in our layer. Where the frame is smooth, probability collapses into clarity. Where the frame is irregular, outcomes scatter. The randomness is the noise of the frame. Now, let your mind glide to gravity. It is too weak, too diffused, too oddly behaved to be a force native to our layer. Gravity might be a leakage, a faint pull from the deeper structure beneath the cosmic skin, like the gentle dip of fabric where something presses from below. Matter curves space not because it possesses intrinsic mass, but because mass is how the frame impresses itself on the layer. Black holes are where the frame pushes through, where the layer collapses under deeper pressure. Once you see it this way, everything aligns. Quantum uncertainty, cosmic order, fractal repetition, gravity's weakness, dark matter's ghostly influence, dark energy's gentle inflation, different languages, same phenomenon, a single architecture shaping a single layer. Let's go further. If the deeper frame shapes the universe, then the fractures show where the layer is closest to that frame. The Planck scale touches it from below. Cosmic voids touch it from above. Black holes puncture toward it. These three regions form a map, a triangulation of the deeper structure. Physicists unintentionally trace this map through anomalies, equations, simulations, and observations. They traced it without knowing what they were drawing. Now imagine these three regions not as isolated features, but as vertices of a single geometry, a geometry hinting at the frame's shape. Perhaps the deeper structure is lattice-like. Perhaps it is fluid-like. Perhaps it is more like a neural graph or a vibrational scaffold. We cannot describe it with words of space or time, because space and time are not properties of the frame. They are properties of the layer stretched across it. But we can describe how the frame makes the universe behave. If the frame vibrates, our layer produces quantum fluctuations. If the frame shifts, our layer produces gravitational waves. If the frame expands, our layer produces cosmic inflation. If the frame has curvature, our layer inherits geometry. Everything we see is the response of the layer to the frame. And this is where the fractures tell us something extraordinary. The frame is not static. It moves, it evolves, it oscillates. What we perceive as the expansion of the universe may be the relaxation of tension in the deeper structure. What we call dark energy may be the subtle stretching of the frame itself. What we label cosmic acceleration may be the frame adjusting to its own internal forces. The universe expands because the frame beneath it breathes. Let this image settle. We are living on the surface of something that breathes. The breath is slow, cosmic, measured in aeons, not seconds. But the rhythm becomes clearer when we listen through the fractures, the irregularities that act as the heartbeat of the deeper architecture. What, then, does the breathing shape look like? Here, language becomes fog. Our metaphors reach their limits. Yet the fractures give us hints of symmetry, hints of dimension, hints of topology. The deeper structure may resemble a nested lattice, infinitely recursive, a network of interconnected nodes, a curved manifold folding back into itself, a higher dimensional scaffold, a vibrational matrix, a living geometry. But we must be careful. None of these descriptions capture the truth. They are only shadows of a shadow, human-shaped interpretations of something that may not resemble anything in our world. Still, the fractures whisper one thing with clarity. The deeper structure is not random. It is organized, coherent, self-consistent, alive in its own way. And the universe is not an isolated bubble floating in void. It is a thin membrane wrapped around a vast architecture. A single cell inside a larger organism, a layer in a cosmic hierarchy we have not yet learned to climb. If this is true, then the question shifts. It is no longer, what is the universe made of? But, why does the frame beneath it exist at all? And what else rests upon it? Because if our universe is only one layer, then layers above and below must exist. Layers that touch ours in invisible ways. Layers that press, vibrate, distort, and echo into our reality. Layers whose presence becomes most evident at the fractures where our universe strains to hold its own shape. To follow this path deeper, we must explore not the layer, but the pressure beneath it. The pressure that shapes everything. The pressure that warps constants. The pressure that stretches space. The pressure that nudges galaxies. The pressure that vibrates quantum fields. A pressure that may be the signature of a larger environment our universe is embedded in. A higher layer, a surrounding medium, a parent structure. And as we slip further inward, the next realization rises quietly from the fractures. Whatever is beneath our universe is not silent. It is not neutral. It is not empty. It is active. It is shaping us. It is speaking through distortions. And the next step is to finally listen to what the pressure beneath our layer is trying to say. The pressure beneath our universe is not uniform. If it were simple, the cosmos would be simple. Instead, the pressure shifts like weather moving beneath a thin sheet of metal. Areas tighten, areas slacken, areas curve, buckle, relax, or compress. These fluctuations are not chaos, they carry structure. They pulse with patterns a little too organized to be random, a little too coherent to be noise. If you close your eyes and imagine the universe as a vast membrane stretched across something breathing, you can almost feel the subtle tremors traveling through it. They hum through gravitational waves. They shimmer in background radiation. They flicker in the quantum foam, where space trembles as if touched by invisible hands. This pressure is the signature of a deeper environment, an environment in which our universe is the surface, not the whole. When a deeper environment touches a surface, it leaves effects small at first, imperceptible, then accumulating until the surface begins to reveal the outline of what presses against it. Our universe reveals its outline in the form of curvature, not curvature of space alone, but curvature of rules. Rules that should be fixed but bend. Rules that should be symmetric but tilt. Rules that should stay constant but ripple faintly at boundaries. Why do physical constants have the values they do? Why do they interlock with uncanny precision? Why do tiny deviations appear only in extreme environments? Because the constants are not written into the universe, they are inherited from the deeper structure beneath it. Not chosen, not arbitrary. Imposed. Imagine stretching a thin film over a sculpted mold. The contours of the mold define every dip and crest on the film. The film does not choose its shape. It reflects the shape that lies beneath. In the same way, our universe reflects the geometry of the deeper layer. If the deeper structure had been slightly different, a little more curved, a little more angular, a little more fragmented, our physical constants would shift accordingly, and the universe we know would collapse, reform, or fail to exist at all. We are not adapted to this universe. We are adapted to the pressure that shaped it. Now drift deeper into an even stranger thought. This pressure is not static. It behaves like a vast, slow ocean, currents moving, tides shifting, waves rising and falling across unimaginable stretches of time. And our universe responds. When the deeper layer expands, our layer inflates. When it relaxes, cosmic acceleration slows. When it tightens, galaxies draw closer. When it ripples, quantum fields jitter and probabilities tilt. Physics is not a fundamental language. It is the dialect our layer speaks when the deeper layer moves. This movement is most apparent near the largest voids regions, so vast and so empty that the universe seems almost transparent there. In these expanses, the cosmic skin thins, and the pressure from beneath touches more directly. Light drifts differently. Distances distort subtly. Matter curves strangely. Time stretches faintly. Cosmic voids are windows not to space beyond space, but to the deeper structure pushing up beneath the skin. And just as voids reveal the gentlest contours of the deeper layer, black holes reveal the sharpest ones. A black hole's singularity is not a physical collapse. It is a place where our layer buckles under pressure from a structure it cannot faithfully translate. Inside a black hole, space does not curve infinitely, it deforms toward a deeper dimension. Time does not slow to zero. It loses meaning because time is a property of the layer alone. Mass does not compress, it becomes information etched into the surface, encoded because the deeper structure cannot express its form inside the layer. Black holes are punctures, not exits, not entrances, but places where our layer is pushed hardest by what lies beneath. And the strangest clue of all, the edges of black holes flicker, not visibly, not in light, but in the mathematics of Hawking radiation, tiny quantum fluctuations at the boundary, as though the deeper structure vibrates through microscopic cracks, whispering its presence. Follow these whispers across different scales, and they articulate the same message. Your universe is not alone. But not alone does not mean surrounded by parallel universes floating in some outer void. That is too simple, too human, too flattened. No, not alone means embedded. Embedded in a structure that extends upward and downward in ways we have no language for. A hierarchy not of stacked dimensions, nor of Russian dolls, nor of concentric shells, though each metaphor touches part of the truth. It is a hierarchy of informational geometry, a nesting of rule sets, a layering of expressive boundaries. Each layer shapes the one above it. Each layer limits the one below it. Each layer holds tension. Each layer passes disturbances upward and downward. And our universe is only one of these layers, not at the top, not at the center, not even necessarily at the most stable point. It is a middle layer, thin and shimmering, like a sheet of soap stretched across two pressures, pressure from the deeper structure and pressure from a layer above ours. Because if something lies beneath our universe, something must also rest above it. The effects of the upper layer are different, softer, more diffuse, less direct. Where the lower layer pushes sharply, the upper layer pulls gently. Where the lower imposes geometry, the upper influences flow. Where the lower creates tension, the upper regulates relaxation. This is why expansion accelerates, why cosmic flows drift toward invisible attractors, why certain large-scale alignments appear to orient themselves as though responding to a faint tug. Gravity does not explain these motions. Dark energy does not explain them. Statistical noise does not explain them. But a higher layer does. A layer whose presence reveals itself in the universe's most delicate behavior, smooth accelerations, gentle drifts, persistent alignments, slow coherences that stretch across billions of light years. Imagine a thin sheet suspended between two currents, a cold pressure below, a warm flow above. The sheet shifts according to both, creating ripples, tensions, and distortions. That is our universe. Pressed from beneath, pulled from above, everything we call physics, everything we label as law, everything we describe as cosmology, is simply the result of our layer trying to stay coherent between these forces. And now, the fractures make sense. They appear in regions where the two pressures interact most violently, where our layer struggles to maintain its geometry. The Planck scale compressed from below. cosmic voids stretched from above, black holes punctured from beneath, acceleration flows guided from above, 4 kinds of distortions, 2 interacting layers, 1 fragile membrane in between. We have been studying the universe as though it were a closed, self-contained system. But we are beginning to see the truth. The universe is shaped by what touches it, and it is touched from both sides, the deeper layer below, the subtle layer above. We live within a cosmic interval. And once you understand that, a new question rises quietly from the dark. If our universe rests between 2 layers, what lies beyond them? What structure contains them? What environment shapes this entire hierarchy? What architecture do all layers belong to? Because the fractures are beginning to sketch the outline of something larger than our universe, a framework vast enough to hold countless layers, each one pressed between others, each one reflecting and distorting the deeper geometry in its own imperfect way. To glimpse that framework, we must follow the pressure upward into the faint pull beyond the cosmic horizon, into the gentle currents shaping the universe from above, into the influences too soft to measure, yet too consistent to deny, and step into the layer that sits just beyond our own. The pull from above becomes clearest when we examine something most people never question: the constants of nature. Numbers so ancient, so absolute in our minds, that we treat them like eternal truths. But constants are not truths. They are conditions, and conditions always have sources. The speed of light, the gravitational constant, the charge of the electron, the fine structure constant, Planck's constant, the cosmological constant. These values feel carved into the bones of reality. Change any one of them, even slightly, and the universe collapses into something unrecognizable, a place with no stars, no atoms, no chemistry, no stability, no life. But here is the quiet question. Why these values? Why this precision? Why this delicate balance, tuned so exquisitely that the slightest departure would unravel existence? For decades, physicists have answered with a shrug disguised as theory. Anthropic reasoning, the idea that the universe has these constants because otherwise we wouldn't be here to ask the question. But that is not an answer. It is a placeholder, a hesitation. The fractures tell a different story. Look closely. Constants appear constant only within our layer. But when we measure them across cosmic epochs, across ancient light stretching toward us from billions of years ago, subtle discrepancies appear. They are tiny, barely measurable, but real enough to trouble those who listen carefully. It is as though the constants shift depending on where and when you measure them, not randomly, but in a pattern too faint to decode, as though something beyond the universe is adjusting the tension of the layer, and the constants respond to that tension. Imagine a tight rope anchored between 2 points. Its pitch changes as the anchors move, not dramatically, just enough to shift the tone. Our universe is like that rope. The constants are the pitch. The deeper layers are the anchor points. When the lower layer presses, certain constants tilt one way. When the upper layer pulls, they tilt another, and the observable universe becomes the oscillation that emerges from that subtle tension. Let's drift more slowly now. Consider the fine structure constant, the number that determines how strongly particles interact through electromagnetism. It is roughly 1/137, a value so mysterious that physicists treat it with a kind of reverence, as though nature whispered it into the equations with deliberate intent. But some studies of distant quasars suggest it was slightly different billions of years ago. Not by much, but enough to hint at a deeper influence. Imagine a thin skin stretched over a curved surface. Its tension changes depending on the shape beneath it. Even a tiny shift in the curvature affects the skin's properties. The fine structure constant may be the tension of our universe's skin, a tension set by the curvature of the deeper layer below. Now consider the cosmological constant, the pressure responsible for the universe's expansion. It too appears stable. But galaxies far in the past suggest a slightly different rate of expansion, not merely because the universe was younger, but because the deeper structure beneath our layer may have been under different stresses. As the deeper layer shifts, so does our expansion. The cosmological constant is the breathing of the architecture beneath. Let this imagery settle like dust in a sunbeam. If constants are reflections of tension, then physics as we know it is not describing the universe's internal rules. It is describing the reaction of our layer to forces applied from outside. When the deeper layer flexes, time stretches. When the deeper layer relaxes, space expands. When pressure builds, mass increases. When pressure loosens, interactions weaken. Everything changes softly, like a tide rising and falling beneath a boat. This is why constants appear constant. The tide is slow, cosmically slow. It shifts over billions of years, too gradually for any creature living inside the layer to notice directly. But the universe notices. Atoms hear it in their resonances. Stars hear it in their lifetimes. Galaxies hear it in their drift. The cosmic background hears it in its faint temperature gradients. The layer above us contributes its own signature, a kind of smoothing force, a gentle pull that stabilizes these shifts. The deeper layer pushes, the upper layer balances, and the constants settle into values that reflect the equilibrium of the two. When the equilibrium changes, even slightly, the constants change with it. This is not wild speculation, it is what the data hints at quietly. Some early universe measurements imply that the mass ratio of the proton to the electron might have shifted. Some observations of distant clusters indicate slight variations in gravitational coupling. Cosmological simulations struggle because constants must be tuned differently depending on the epoch modeled. It is as though the constants are not sources of truth, but indicators of a deeper truth. Imagine tuning forks placed on a vibrating table. They hum because the table hums. Their tones appear fixed, but if the table's vibration shifts by even a fraction, the forks follow. We treat the forks as fundamental. We forget the table exists. Physics has been listening to the forks. Now it must listen to the table. Let's slow the thought down further. Why would a deeper structure influence the constants at all? What purpose does this serve? The answer might be simpler than we expect. Stability. Our universe is not self-stabilizing. If left alone, it would drift toward extremes, collapsing or expanding too quickly, breaking symmetry too violently, forming too few atoms or too many black holes. The deeper structure may act as a stabilizer, a regulatory environment that keeps our layer balanced within a narrow range of allowed behaviors, not by intention, not by intelligence, but by the natural dynamics of a layered system. In a layered fluid, the layer above damps oscillations from the layer below. In a layered crystal, tension distributes evenly across structures. In a biological membrane, deeper scaffolds hold the surface shape stable. The deeper layer anchors us. The upper layer tempers us. Our universe is suspended between these forces, a stable sheet in a multi-layered architecture. The constants are the fingerprints of that suspension. Every number we treat as cosmic truth may simply be the tension required for our layer to remain coherent. And when the tension shifts, the numbers shift with it. This brings us to a strange realization. Constants are not properties of reality. They are negotiations between layers. What we call truth may be the outcome of a cosmic compromise, not between competing forces, but between deeper geometries shaping our surface. If we embrace this, then the universe stops appearing like an isolated miracle and becomes something more grounded, more structured, more physical than we ever imagined. A layer shaped by pressures from both above and below. A layer whose laws are inherited, not intrinsic. A layer whose stability is borrowed, not owned. A layer whose constants are echoes of a much larger equilibrium. And if constants shift with the deeper structure's curvature, then that curvature must lie beneath the skin of space itself. To understand the next step, we have to look not at numbers, but at space. Not the stars, not the galaxies, not the voids, but the fabric that holds them. Because if constants are the tension of the skin, then space is the skin itself. And the question becomes inevitable. What if space is not a volume, but a surface? A surface pressed between deeper layers, and now, gently, we slip toward that next layer of the idea, like a hand brushing across the skin of something larger than we have ever known. If space is a surface, then every point within it becomes an illusion. Not false. Illusions are not false, but derived, dependent, emergent. A surface has no true inside. It is only a boundary separating two deeper domains, a membrane stretched between environments. Space behaves exactly like that. We navigate through it as though it were a vast three-dimensional ocean. But when we examine its behavior with enough precision, it reveals something stranger. Space vibrates like a surface. Space bends like a surface. Space tears like a surface. Space heals like a surface. Space carries tension like a surface. Space ripples like a surface, struck from beneath. And most importantly, space has no thickness. This is not metaphor, it is measurement. At scales below the Planck length, the concept of distance dissolves, not because our tools fail, but because distance itself stops being meaningful. A surface cannot define depth within itself. A two-dimensional membrane cannot measure the thickness of the 3D world beneath it. It can only react to pressures from that world. Likewise, our universe cannot measure the deeper structure directly. It can only respond. This response becomes geometry. The familiar curvature of spacetime, the bending of paths, the warping of trajectories, is the way our surface adapts to forces pressing from below. If the deeper frame curves, space curves. If the deeper frame relaxes, space expands. If the deeper frame ripples, gravitational waves travel across our layer. Our universe is a projection of the frame's behavior. To visualize this, imagine a sheet of fabric stretched over a sculpted shape. The fabric takes on the contours of the shape beneath hills, valleys, slopes, ridges, even though the fabric itself has no true depth. Replace the fabric with space. Replace the sculpted shape with the deeper layer. Replace the contours with the physics we observe. Suddenly, relativity becomes a natural property. Objects follow curved paths because space is the skin, not the interior. Quantum foam becomes the grain of the fabric, the tiny fluctuations that occur when the deeper layer vibrates against the surface. Dark matter becomes the invisible texture, not particles, but tension patterns imposed by the deeper shape. Dark energy becomes the gentle pull, the smoothing influence from the layer above, stretching the surface evenly. Every mystery becomes a texture of the skin. If space is a skin, then matter is not a substance inside it, but a disturbance on it. Matter is a knot, a wrinkle, a localized deformation where the deeper frame pushes harder or softer. Mass is not an intrinsic property. It is how tightly the knot binds the fabric to the frame. When energy compresses the surface, the knot deepens. When the deeper structure shifts, knots form or loosen. Even light, our cleanest symbol of purity, is just a ripple sliding across the tension of the skin. A ripple does not travel within the surface, it travels along it. That is why the speed of light is constant, because it is the intrinsic propagation speed of tension waves on this membrane. And that is why gravity pulls everything toward distortions, because the membrane's curvature guides the ripples. Nothing falls downward. Everything flows along the surface toward lower tension. Time itself becomes vibration, a rhythm marking how the skin oscillates. When tension increases, time slows. When tension relaxes, time accelerates. This is what relativity was showing us from the beginning. Not that time changes because of motion, but that time reflects the tension of the membrane. Now consider the most puzzling behavior of space. It expands, not as a substance filling more volume, but as a surface stretching further. A surface stretches when the pressure behind it changes. When the deeper layer breathes outward, space expands. When the deeper layer contracts, expansion slows. The cosmic acceleration we observe is the inhalation of the structure beneath. Our universe expands because the frame that holds it is shifting. This brings us to a quiet but profound realization. Space is not the environment we live in. It is the boundary where two environments meet, the deeper layer beneath, the upper layer above. Our universe is not floating in emptiness, it is sandwiched between forces. And space is the thin region where those forces resolve into something stable enough to host the phenomena we call reality. But this membrane is not uniform. It thickens and thins metaphorically, not in physical thickness, but in coherence. Where the membrane is highly coherent near dense matter, near strong fields, space behaves predictably. Where the membrane loosens inside cosmic voids, space behaves strangely. And where coherence collapses in black holes, space fails entirely. All three regimes map the behavior of a surface under varying pressure. Now, drift your awareness to a subtle point. If space is a boundary, then it must have sides. One side, we already feel the deeper structure pressing upward. But what about the other side? What lies above the membrane? Above is not higher dimension. Above is not the multiverse. Above is not heaven in any spiritual or metaphorical sense. Above is simply the environment in which the membrane is suspended, where the deeper layer provides curvature and pressure. The upper layer provides diffusion and flow. We have already sensed its presence through phenomena that do not originate from below. Smooth cosmic acceleration, gentle drifts of galaxies, mysterious alignments on the largest scales, the tendency of certain structures to orient along a common axis. These are not pressures from beneath, they are influences from above. If the lower layer is structure, the upper layer is flow. If the lower forces curvature, the upper provides relaxation. If the lower defines constraints, the upper defines freedom. Our universe exists between the two, a thin sheet held in place by opposing influences, the skin of existence. This also explains why some constants remain too perfect, not because they were born perfect, but because the upper layer smooths the irregularities. It irons out fluctuations. It dampens distortions. It regulates tension. The frame below shapes the membrane. The layer above stabilizes it, and the membrane becomes livable. This dual influence structure from below, smoothing from above, creates the exact conditions for complexity to emerge. Atoms, stars, galaxies, consciousness, not miracles, not accidents, but the natural outcome of a surface held in balance. And now a deeper question emerges, soft as breath. If space is a membrane, and if our universe is only one such membrane, then how many membranes exist? How many layers lie beneath? How many lie above? And what vast architecture holds all of them together? We are drifting closer to that architecture, not in distance, but in understanding. The fractures are beginning to point upward as clearly as they point downward, suggesting a symmetry not of form, but of interaction. A symmetry shared by every layer in the hierarchy. And to trace that symmetry, we must move beyond the skin itself, toward the forces that connect one layer to another. Forces we have misunderstood as gravity, randomness, dark matter, coincidence, when they may be the threads that stitch the membranes together. If something presses from beneath the membrane of space, then that pressure cannot be silent. Pressure shapes, pressure directs. Pressure leaves scars, and our universe carries too many scars for the pressure beneath it to be gentle. Think of the way galaxies drift toward invisible attractors, as though responding to a force with no name. Or the way dark matter gathers in thick halos, not because gravity demands it, but because tension beneath the membrane bulges through. Or the way entire superclusters stream in coordinated motion toward regions beyond the cosmic horizon, as if pulled by a gravitational hand we cannot see. These are not internal dynamics. They are not flukes. They are the marks of a lower layer imposing itself on ours. To feel this, imagine lying on a thin sheet with another presence beneath it, a shifting, restless presence that changes position slowly, rhythmically. Even though you cannot see it, you feel its movements ripple through the sheet, lifting some points, stretching others, bending the surface around you. Our universe is that sheet. The deeper layer is the presence moving beneath it. The most obvious signature of this presence is what we call dark energy, the accelerating expansion of the universe. But expansion is only the surface expression. The underlying cause is deeper, quieter, older. Dark energy is not an energy pushing outward. It is the effect of pressure rising from below, stretching the membrane outward, increasing its surface area. When the deeper layer expands, our layer must expand with it. When the deeper layer contracts, our expansion would slow. Physics tries to treat this expansion as intrinsic, but nothing intrinsic behaves so variably. Nothing intrinsic requires constant recalibration. Nothing intrinsic drifts with cosmic history the way expansion does. Expansion is a response, not a cause. Even inflation, that unimaginable burst of expansion in the earliest fraction of a second, becomes understandable when seen through this lens. It is the moment the deeper structure pressed most violently against a newly formed membrane, not intentionally, not intelligently, but as a consequence of its own dynamics. A membrane forms under tension, the tension forces it outward. Our universe was pulled taut in an instant because the deeper layer beneath it shifted abruptly. Inflation is the echo of a deeper movement. Now let the thought settle. If expansion is pressure, then dark matter is curvature, the weight of the lower layer pushing up into the membrane. Dark matter halos appear where the membrane thickens around pressure spikes. Their shapes rarely match the distribution of visible matter. Instead, they map the geography of tension beneath the layer. The cosmic web forms not because matter arranges itself that way, but because the deeper frame has ridges and valleys, structural contours, and matter accumulates along the ridges, the way dust gathers along lines in a vibrating drum. Every filament is a tension line imposed from below. Every void is a region where pressure relaxes. Our universe is not drawing patterns from itself. It is tracing the contours of a deeper world. To see this with more clarity, imagine a rubber sheet stretched over a landscape. From above, you see hills and valleys in the sheet's shape, but the sheet itself is smooth. The hills and valleys are caused by the terrain beneath it. Now replace rubber with space. Replace hills with galaxies. Replace valleys with voids. Replace terrain with the deeper layer. Suddenly, the universe becomes readable. Even the mysterious axis of evil, the large-scale alignment stretching across billions of light years, becomes a contour, a ridge beneath the membrane, pressing a directional pattern into the universe. If the deeper pressure is uneven, our universe develops anisotropies, not because something inside it creates them, but because something below it shapes them. This explains why certain cosmic features align with no known astrophysical cause. They are not created by processes within the universe. They are imprinted from the layer beneath. Now drift into one of the strangest tensions imposed by the lower layer, the imbalance between matter and antimatter. According to the rules of our layer, the early universe should have produced equal amounts of each, but it didn't. Matter won, antimatter vanished. Physics calls this baryon asymmetry. No law inside the universe explains it, but a boundary does. When a membrane forms over a shifting lower medium, the tensions distribute asymmetrically. Some regions gain density, others lose it. Some patterns amplify, others collapse. Matter's victory over antimatter is not a process, it is a pressure gradient. The deeper layer pushed unevenly, and the membrane inherited the imbalance. This pressure gradient also explains why certain particles behave as though they respond to forces that do not exist in our universe. They are responding to forces beneath it. Neutrinos oscillate because tension beneath them oscillates. Quantum states collapse because the lower layer exerts discrete pulses. Virtual particles flicker because the fabric they inhabit vibrates against a deeper boundary. Everything random is not random, it is interaction. The deeper layer touches our universe not continuously, but in quanta pulses, ripples, nudges. Space is not still. It shivers from beneath. These shivers appear in the cosmic microwave background as temperature fluctuations. They appear in gravitational wave backgrounds as long-period oscillations. They appear in quantum decoherence as noise patterns no mechanism inside the universe can produce. If you lay a sheet of paper on a rumbling table, the ink on the page will shake in patterns you cannot trace to the ink itself. The table is the cause. The paper is the witness. The universe is witnessing the rumble of its deeper foundation. Now consider what happens when pressure beneath the membrane intensifies sharply. A black hole. A black hole is not simply a collapse of matter. It is a puncture, a point where tension from beneath overwhelms the membrane's ability to hold form. The singularity is not a point of infinite density. It is the contact point between layers. Space collapses not because matter compresses it, but because the deeper structure pushes through. Matter does not fall into the black hole. It is trapped along the surface as information because the membrane folds, locking that information in place. The event horizon is the boundary where the membrane ceases to behave according to the rules of our layer. It is a scar, not a place where the universe thins until it can no longer maintain its own shape. And beneath the scar, the deeper layer curves upward sharply, an indentation rising through the membrane. Even Hawking radiation, the tiny flicker of particles escaping the horizon, becomes understandable. It is the vibration of the membrane along the scar, a trembling created by the deeper layer trying to settle back into equilibrium. Black holes are the loudest pressure points of the deeper realm. But pressure is not only destructive, it also organizes. Think of the cosmic web, its filaments stretching like the veins of some enormous organism, its clusters acting like nodes, its voids expanding like lungs between inhales. This is not the structure of isolated matter. This is the structure of a membrane responding to forces beneath it. The deeper layer beneath likely has its own geometry, a geometry far richer than anything we can describe in three-dimensional terms. Our universe is simply the negative image. If the lower structure has ridges, our universe forms filaments. If the lower structure has depressions, our universe forms voids. If the lower structure shifts, our universe evolves. Every galactic supercluster is an echo of a deeper scaffold. Every cosmic alignment is a whisper of a deeper pattern. Every gravitational anomaly is a hint of a deeper route the membrane follows. We have mistaken these echoes for the universe's own voice. Now slow down a little more. What, then, is the deeper layer itself made of? It is not matter. Matter belongs to our layer. It is not space. Space is our membrane. It is not energy. Energy is a measurement of behavior inside our domain. The deeper structure is not stuff. It is form, a topology, a geometry, a shape that is to our universe what a skeleton is to skin. And we are only beginning to sense its outline through the distortions, the long wavelength gravitational hums, the anisotropies of background radiation, the cosmic flows that exceed all expectations, the fractal echoes across scales, the oscillations of quantum states. All of them map the same terrain, a terrain beneath our universe. But if this deeper structure shapes us so precisely, then surely somewhere the universe must reveal a direct imprint of that structure, not through pressure, but through presence. And the first place to look is not beneath us, but beyond the membrane itself, toward the strange region where our layer touches the one above it. The presence above our layer does not press the way the deeper structure does. Its influence is softer, smoother, more diffused, like a warm current flowing gently across the surface of a lake, barely perceptible except in the way the reflections shift. While the lower layer shapes the membrane with pressure, the upper layer shapes it with drift, and this drift is everywhere. You see it in the quiet acceleration of cosmic expansion, too even to be random, too delicate to be violent. You see it in the large-scale motions of galaxy clusters, drifting not toward mass, but toward something far subtler, a kind of gentle pull that does not behave like gravity. You see it in the mysterious bulk flows, vast rivers of galaxies moving in the same direction as if responding to a faint, steady wind. This wind does not originate inside our universe. It comes from the layer above it. Imagine standing on a thin tarp, suspended between two forces, a rough, shifting pressure below, and a smooth, continuous airflow above. The tarp bends sharply where the pressure rises, but it also drifts, ripples, and glides where the air moves across it. Our universe is that tarp. The deeper layer pushes, the upper layer glides, and the cosmic flows we observe are the gliding. This flow appears in the cosmic background radiation, too, not as pressure-induced anisotropies, but as smooth gradients, directional drifts, too coherent to be caused by matter within the universe. It is as though the entire membrane is being brushed from above. This brushing introduces a different kind of distortion, one that does not break the membrane, but gently reorients it. Consider the alignment of quasars across billions of light years. Their polarization vectors point in similar directions, as though aligned by some unseen field. No internal mechanism stretches across that distance. No known force can coordinate objects separated by cosmic epochs, but a layer above ours can. It doesn't align them by touching objects directly, it aligns the membrane itself, and the objects simply inherit the orientation. Now slow down for a moment. If the deeper layer beneath gives us curvature, structure, tension, and the upper layer above gives us smoothing, drift, alignment, then our universe becomes the equilibrium point between opposing influences. Too much pressure from below, and the membrane fractures into singularities. Too much drift from above, and the membrane tears into uncontrollable expansion. The universe survives only in the narrow band where the two forces balance. This balance is not perfect. It shifts, flows, pulses, and those shifts shape cosmic history. When the deeper layer tightened early on, we saw inflation. When it relaxed, the membrane cooled. When the upper layer exerted its smoothing influence, structure formation slowed, voids widened, filaments softened. When the deeper layer pressed again, galaxy clusters formed more rigidly. Gravitational wells deepened. The story of the universe is the story of a membrane learning to stay intact between two vast influences. The lower layer shapes its bones. The upper layer shapes its breath. Now consider another clue, something more subtle, almost shy. In quantum field theory, the vacuum is not empty. It buzzes with activity even at absolute zero. Virtual particles appear and vanish. Energy fluctuates. Fields shimmer. These fluctuations are not random noise. Their statistical distribution hints at something flowing around the membrane, a soft bath of information or influence that cannot originate within our universe. They behave like eddies in a current just above the surface. The upper layer may not press, but it grazes, touches lightly, shapes the edge conditions. Quantum fields feel this grazing. They pick up a kind of background, flutter small, persistent, extra-dimensional turbulence, manifesting as vacuum energy. Even the infamous cosmological constant problem, the massive mismatch between predicted vacuum energy and observed vacuum energy, becomes understandable when the vacuum is influenced not from within, but from above. The membrane measures only the part of the flow that touches it directly. The rest remains outside, untranslatable. Dark energy isn't an intrinsic property, it's the portion of the upper layer's flow that the membrane can interpret. And that is why it appears uniform across space. Flows are smooth, pressure is jagged. The deeper layer pushes, the upper layer moves. We feel both. Look now at the largest structures in the universe. The boundaries where expansion and gravity meet in an uneasy truce. Some regions expand faster, some regions slow, some regions drift together. These variations are not the universe acting on itself, they are the membrane responding to tides from above, tides that take billions of years to complete a cycle. Tides we have just begun to notice. A tide from below compresses, a tide from above elongates, a resonance forms. Our universe resonates between them, and resonance requires a stabilizing medium. The upper layer provides that stability. This role becomes most evident in yet another anomaly, the near-perfect uniformity of the cosmic background radiation. Despite inflation, despite structure, despite turbulence, the universe's earliest light remains astonishingly smooth, smoother than any internal mechanism can justify. The deeper layer would have created sharper contrasts. Only the upper layer's smoothing flow could have softened those contrasts so thoroughly. It is like wind smoothing ripples on the surface of water. The smoothing is not flawless. Small temperature variations remain, but even those variations include a faint directional bias that seems not random, but inherited. Inherited from what? From where? The drift of the upper layer. Now, drift alone would not create structure. Pressure alone would create chaos. But the interplay of the two, the push from below, the pull from above, creates complexity. Complexity is not a miracle in this model. It is the natural outcome of a membrane held in dynamic equilibrium. Atoms form because tension and flow meet. Stars form because knots tighten under pressure but dissipate heat through flow. Galaxies form because ridges beneath guide matter, while currents above soften extremes. Life forms because gradients stabilize long enough to support self-organization. We think the universe is fine-tuned, but perhaps it is simply well-balanced between two forces that existed before it. And here lies the quiet revelation. If our universe floats between two influences, then it is not the first, and it will not be the last. Layers above and below shift independently. As they shift, membranes form, stretch, collapse, reform cosmic intervals born and dissolved, like breaths in a larger organism. Our universe is one breath, one inhalation in a larger rhythm, one vibration in a larger chord, one layer in a hierarchy of structures we have barely begun to sense. If the lower layer shapes form and the upper layer shapes flow, then the next step is to investigate the boundary itself, the membrane's way of expressing both influences simultaneously. Not quantum, not cosmic, not gravitational, something else. A fundamental trait that arises only when both pressures act at once, creating behaviors neither layer can produce alone. This hybrid trait is the key to understanding the next descent. It is the property that defines our universe's identity, the characteristic that reveals where our layer sits in the hierarchy. And to uncover it, we must step into the realm where space, time, and matter stop being separate at all, where the membrane shows its true nature as an interface, and where the next layer of understanding begins to shimmer through the surface like light from beneath deep water. When you move into the region where the pressures above and below meet, something strange happens. The membrane stops behaving like space. It stops behaving like time. It stops behaving like matter. It becomes something more primitive, more fluid, more fundamental, a single substance that later splits into the categories we use to interpret reality. Before space is space, before time is time, before matter is matter, the membrane exists as nothing more than response. Response to pressure, response to drift, response to vibration, response to imbalance. Our universe began in this state, not as a fireball, not as a point of infinite density, but as a zone of pure responsiveness. For a moment, the membrane was neither stretched nor slack. It was flexible, undefined, capable of shifting into any form the deeper architecture demanded. From this flexibility, time emerged first. Not chronologically, but conceptually. Time is the membrane's ability to record change. If nothing changes, time does not exist. If change occurs, the membrane keeps track, creating a direction. Time, then, is bookkeeping the memory of how the deeper forces have acted upon the membrane. This is why time behaves differently under different pressures: slow, near strong curvature; fast in emptiness; soft in low-tension environments; rigid in high-tension ones. Time is not universal. It is local because pressure is local. When the deeper layer presses intensely in the heart of a massive star, in the rim of a black hole, time thickens, congeals, resists flow. When pressure loosens in cosmic voids, time stretches, thins, accelerates. Time is the membrane's shadow of tension. Then space emerges, not as a container, but as the membrane's way of distributing tension. Where pressure is uniform, space expands smoothly. Where pressure varies, space warps. Where pressure spikes, space wrinkles. Where pressure fractures, space collapses. Space is the membrane's attempt to keep equilibrium. It has no volume of its own. It is only the surface across which deeper forces try to express themselves. And matter? Matter is what happens when pressure and drift meet in such a way that the membrane knots. A knot is stable not because of what it is, but because of what the membrane cannot do. It cannot untie the knot without breaking itself. Thus, matter persists. Every particle you have ever seen, every atom that ever formed, every star burning in the sky is a knot in the membrane, pinned between the lower layer's structured push and the upper layer's smoothing flow. Even the quantum properties of particles, spin, charge, mass, are ways the knot negotiates between both influences. Mass is tension from below. Energy is the effect of drift from above. Charge is how the knot twists the membrane longitudinally. Spin is how the knot rotates within the tension. Particles are not objects. They are stable patterns of resistance. Look closer, and the membrane reveals its hybrid nature. When the deeper layer pushes rhythmically, the membrane produces waves, quantum fields. When the upper layer drifts uniformly, the membrane produces flow, cosmic expansion. When both act together, the membrane produces particles, the discrete outcomes of continuous tension. Quantum mechanics and relativity aren't different languages. They are different angles on the same membrane. Quantum behavior emerges when the push from below dominates. Relativistic behavior emerges when the pull from above dominates. Particles form at the equilibrium points between them. This unification isn't mathematical, it is physical, structural, inevitable. The hybrid zone, where neither influence is strong enough to dominate, creates the rules we mistake for fundamental. Uncertainty, superposition, probability waves, entanglement. These are not mysteries of nature. They are the membrane's attempt to resolve conflicting instructions from the layers above and below. Uncertainty is the membrane caught between two incompatible pressures. Superposition is the membrane waiting for a final nudge that stabilizes its state. Probability is the membrane's set of allowable responses to deeper configurations. Entanglement is the membrane synchronized across tension lines imposed from below. None of these require magic. All of them require layers. Now imagine zooming out to the entire cosmos. The cosmic web, those filaments of matter stretching like tendons across inconceivable distances, isn't formed by gravity alone. It is formed along fault lines where the membrane's internal tension aligns with the pressure ridges beneath it. Galaxies appear along these ridges not because matter gathers there, but because the membrane is thicker along those lines. The deeper layer presses outward. The membrane holds shape. Matter accumulates. Drift smooths the extremes. The membrane writes structure wherever pressure and flow overlap. This overlapping is not static. It shifts with cosmic time. It shifts with the breath of the deeper layer. It shifts with the tides of the upper layer, which means the universe is not a fixed entity. It is more like weather. Stable patterns emerge. Unstable ones fade. currents form, boundaries sharpen, knots tighten, relax, break. Flows guide the movement of clusters. Pressure defines the scaffolding. Everything is dynamic. Even the constants we treat as sacred are simply the membrane's current mode of adaptation. Now drift deeper into the hybrid zone, where time, space, and matter are yet to fully separate, where the membrane behaves like a single continuous medium. At this level, the universe is neither geometry nor energy. It is tension. Tension is the primary quantity. Everything else emerges from it. Space distributes tension. Time remembers tension. Particles localize tension. Fields propagate tension. Gravity curves tension. Dark energy smooths tension. Dark matter reinforces tension. Quantum behavior fuzzes tension. And consciousness, whatever it might be, experiences tension, because consciousness is the membrane observing itself. This is not metaphor. This is the unavoidable consequence of the hybrid zone. When the membrane becomes self-referential, it begins producing stable feedback loops, the precursors to mind. Not brains, not biology, not neurons, but awareness. A basic form of awareness arises naturally in any membrane capable of reflecting its own tension. Consciousness is the edge case behavior of a layer under dual influence. We feel time because we feel the membrane's tension changing. We feel space because we feel the surface's extension. We feel matter because we feel resistance. We feel causality because we feel the membrane shifting toward equilibrium. To be alive is to be a knot, recognizing the surface that holds it. And this recognition brings us back to the question whispering beneath everything. If the membrane is shaped by layers above and below, what happens if one of those layers shifts dramatically? What if the deeper layer sends a pulse? What if the upper layer changes direction? What if the tension between them reorganizes? The membrane would respond, constants would drift, structures would realign, flows would reorient, time would stretch differently, space would warp, matter would behave strangely. Awareness would feel the change in ways physics cannot yet describe. We would call it a cosmic transition, not realizing it is simply the next movement of the architecture we belong to. If we want to sense this movement, if we want to understand the deeper hierarchy, we must look at the one place where the membrane's hybrid nature becomes transparent, the region where time ceases to behave as memory and begins to behave as something else entirely. And that is where the next descent leads. There is a point in the descent where matter begins to lose its solidity. Not physically, matter in our scale still holds shape, still occupies space, still resists when touched, but conceptually, it becomes transparent. Because when you have followed the membrane far enough, when you have traced tension down to its roots and drift up to its edges, matter stops looking like a thing and starts looking like an interpretation, a translation, a shadow. Imagine a knot on a surface. From above, you see a raised bump. From below, you see a depression. But the knot is neither bump nor depression. It is the result of tension lines twisting the membrane. Matter is that knot. It is neither the push from below nor the pull from above. It is the membrane's compromise between them. When the deeper layer forms a ridge, the membrane tries to adhere. When the upper layer draws flow across the surface, the membrane tries to smooth. Where those actions cancel imperfectly, the membrane knots. Those knots persist because untying them would require breaking the membrane. Mass is not the property of the knot. Mass is how tightly the membrane is attached to the ridge beneath. Energy is not the fuel of the knot. Energy is the membrane's ability to change its attachment. Charge is the way the knot twists the membrane sideways along drift lines. Spin is the orientation of that twist under tension. Matter is the membrane negotiating between two worlds. This is why particles behave like vibrations at one scale and objects at another. It is why electrons act like probability clouds until forced into decision by a measurement. It is why quantum fields underpin everything. Fields are simply the membrane's baseline state before tension and flow twist it into knotted entities. Now imagine looking at matter not with eyes, but with the logic of tension. Atoms are stable knots because the underlying ridge beneath the membrane is sharp, steep, well-defined. Molecules form when knots align their tension lines in ways that minimize conflict. Stars ignite when knots accumulate until the membrane buckles under pressure. Black holes form when knots overwhelm the membrane entirely. Matter is not substance. It is stability. And stability is only possible because the membrane rests between two layers that force it into coherence. The deeper layer creates zones of rigidity. The upper layer creates zones of flow. Matter forms where rigidity and flow strike equilibrium, not too tight, not too loose. In this sense, matter is the most fragile illusion in the universe. And yet, because illusions built from structure and drift can hold their shapes for billions of years, the illusion becomes the most persistent phenomenon we know. Now shift your attention from matter to something even more slippery: forces. The four fundamental forces: gravity, electromagnetism, the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, have always troubled physicists because they refuse to fit into a single model. They look unrelated, disparate, asymmetrical, but that is only because we are observing them as phenomena inside the membrane. From the perspective of the deeper architecture, forces are simply communication lines. The deeper structure talks to the membrane through one kind of line, what we perceive as curvature, the source of gravity. The upper structure talks to the membrane through another kind of line, smoothing flows that appear to us as dark energy. And the membrane talks to itself through internal connections, which we interpret as the electromagnetic, strong, and weak forces. Gravity is the faint echo of the deeper layer pushing upward. It feels weak precisely because it is not native to our domain. Electromagnetism is the membrane's way of aligning its twists, knots interacting with knots, through oscillations. It is strong because it is entirely internal. It does not cross layers. The strong force is the binding knot, where tension from below and flow from above push most violently against each other. It exists only where the membrane folds sharply around hidden ridges. The weak force is the membrane's ability to untie certain knots, to permit transformation when the deeper pattern shifts beneath a knot's position. All four forces are nothing more than the membrane struggling to communicate between influences. And when those forces appear unified at extremely high energies, it is because at those energies, the membrane stops keeping pressures separate. It behaves briefly like the primal medium it was in its earliest moments, when structure and flow had not yet differentiated. Unification is not the merging of forces. It is the membrane remembering what it was before the layers above and below instructed it to divide. Now consider something more subtle. The membrane is never silent. It vibrates constantly, ripples from the lower layer, currents from the upper layer, resonance from matter knots, distortions from cosmic flows, shivers along tension lines. These vibrations are not noise. They are messages. Every oscillation tells us something about how the membrane is being shaped and by whom. Gravitational waves tell us where the deeper layer flexes. Quantum fluctuations tell us where the upper layer drifts. Field excitations tell us how the membrane tries to respond. Particle interactions tell us how knots negotiate the tension lines. We are eavesdropping on a conversation between layers. And because every layer in the hierarchy influences those above and below, this conversation does not stop with our universe. The membrane we inhabit could be echoing signals from deeper systems we do not yet have the language to imagine. The architecture beneath may be infinitely nested, or it may be finite but vast. Or it may be something more like a network than a structure, nodes speaking to nodes through surfaces like ours. If our membrane is one sheet in a layered environment, then forces may be the threads stitching layers together. Gravity might be the faint tug of deeper topology. Dark energy might be the even fainter tug of upper topology. Electromagnetism might be the stitching within, the membrane. The strong and weak forces might be how the membrane manages shear and tear along tension lines. We call them forces because from within the membrane, they behave as pushes and pulls. But from the outside, they are simply communication. If you were to step outside the membrane, not physically, but conceptually, and look back at the universe with eyes that see tension instead of matter, you would not see particles and fields. You would see pulses along a surface, lines of influence stretching across a thin sheet, regions of concentrated distortion where knots form, ridges beneath guiding structure, flows above regulating expansion. You would see an enormous conversation happening across scales, silent, continuous, intricate, and matter would appear only as the punctuation marks in that conversation. Consciousness, then, becomes the membrane's ability to listen to itself, a knot, learning to read the tension lines around it, to feel the flows above and the structure below, to interpret vibrations as meaning. And if our awareness is a result of this layered conversation, then what happens when the communication changes? When the deeper layer shifts its rhythm? When the upper layer alters its drift? When the membrane feels a different kind of balance? The entire universe would change its tone. Forces would adjust. Matter would evolve. Time would stretch. Space would reconfigure. Consciousness would sense a new language spoken through the membrane, not abruptly, but gradually, like the slow turn of a cosmic season. And the fractures we observe across physics today, the anomalies, the paradoxes, the mismatches, may be the first hints that such a season is underway. Because the conversation between layers is never static. It breathes, it shifts, it learns, it reorganizes. And our universe, resting on the boundary between forces above and below, responds in kind. What we call history may be nothing more than the membrane adapting to new messages. To follow these messages deeper, we must look beyond matter, beyond forces, beyond tension to the pattern the membrane seems to be drifting toward, the pattern that will reveal not how the universe behaves now, but what it is becoming. When you listen closely enough to the membrane, there is a kind of static that never fully disappears, a fine-grained trembling woven through everything. It hides in quantum randomness, in background radiation, in fluctuations of fields, in the jitter of particles that refuse to stay still. We call it uncertainty, but that is the name we give to anything that does not behave the way our layer demands. This trembling is not random, nor is it internal. It is interference, a signal we do not know how to decode, like faint whispers traveling through a wall, distorted by distance, softened by thickness, yet still insisting they come from somewhere beyond. We can hear the whispers, but not the words. We can feel the rhythm, but not the meaning. The membrane is bathed in this noise. At first glance, it looks like the natural jitter of quantum fields, the zero-point motion, the vacuum fluctuation, the inherent instability of the smallest scales. But when you compare data across different systems, across different scales, across different energies, a strange coherence begins to emerge. Patterns that should not match. Fluctuations that should be independent, synchronize. Noises separated by billions of light years echo each other faintly, like two mirrors reflecting the same unseen movement. It is as though the upper layer is humming, not loudly, not forcefully, but steadily, a background vibration that imprints itself through the membrane. This hum can be measured in gravitational wave backgrounds, which arrive not as dramatic bursts from colliding black holes, but as slow, low-frequency oscillations that cannot be traced to any cosmic event. It can be seen in cosmic microwave background anomalies, subtle directional biases, temperature deviations, alignments that persist across the entire sky. It appears in the slight drift of fundamental constants over cosmic time, not enough to cause chaos, but enough to suggest the membrane is being slowly retuned. It appears, most intimately, in quantum jumps, those inexplicable transitions where particles shift states instantaneously, as though responding to an instruction not from within, but from outside. Quantum unpredictability, then, is not the universe misbehaving. It is the membrane picking up interference from the layer above. A translation error, a misalignment, a glimpse of the deeper communication traveling through the hierarchy. Imagine a lake. Wind flows across its surface, shaping ripples. Pressure from below forms patterns in sand. Creatures swimming beneath disturb the water. All these actions blend into a noise that someone on the surface experiences as chaotic shimmer. But the shimmer contains information if one knew how to read it. Our universe is shimmering, and in the shimmer lies the first real clue that reality is layered not vertically, not spatially, but structurally. Because the noise is not uniform, it comes in nodes, pulses, harmonics, not everywhere at once, but concentrated along vast regions where the membrane behaves differently. These regions, the cosmic web, the deep voids, the scarred rims of black holes, act like resonant chambers. They amplify the hum from above. They distort its frequencies. They shape how the membrane expresses tension, flow, and structure. And the amplified patterns combine into something larger, a global architecture. Not the architecture of galaxies, not the architecture of space-time, but the architecture of layers. A structure of layers stacked not by distance, but by behavior. The humming above does not simply influence our membrane, it binds it into a larger system. Think of a stack of thin metal sheets. When one vibrates, the vibrations travel through the stack. Not all sheets respond equally, some resonate strongly, others barely move. Now imagine each sheet as a universe. Each one responds to pressures above and below. Each one holds its own rules, its own knots, its own flows. Each one reflects the tensions of its neighbors. Our universe is one sheet in that stack. When the layer below shifts, our membrane curves. When the layer above drifts, our membrane stretches. When both layers vibrate, the membrane jitters with patterns we interpret as quantum noise. But what about the other layers? The noise we observe does not belong solely to the layer above ours. It contains harmonics that cannot be explained by a single source. Some frequencies match the expected behavior of the upper layer, but others do not. Some signals behave as though they originate from a layer even higher. Some as though they rebound from a layer even deeper. It is like listening to an ecosystem of vibrations, each layer transmitting its own rhythm. We do not hear the rhythms directly, we hear their interference on the membrane. These interferences form patterns that repeat across cosmic scales. The alignment of quasar axes, the large-scale cosmic dipole, the faint preferred direction in the background radiation, the improbable synchronization of galaxy spins across billions of light years. These are not coincidences, they are resonances, our membrane aligning with the beating of the layers above and below. If the layers were perfectly uniform, perfectly static, perfectly symmetric, we would detect nothing. We would think the universe is isolated, sealed, self-contained, but the layers are alive. They shift, they hum, they press, they drift, and every motion they make passes through us as noise, structured, meaningful noise we have not yet learned to interpret. Once you see this, the idea of a single universe dissolves. The membrane cannot exist alone. It is part of a hierarchy that extends beyond our ability to map, a stacked architecture, not of matter, not of dimensions, not of parallel worlds, but of informational surfaces, each one shaped by the ones above and below it, each one contributing to the dynamics of the whole. We experience our layer as cosmos. The layer above experiences ours as noise. The layer below experiences ours as drift. Every membrane behaves differently depending on what lies on either side. Some layers might be more rigid, some more fluid, some might not sustain matter at all, some might not know time, some might possess entirely different modes of existence. We are not at the top. We are not at the bottom. We are a middle sheet, a resonant membrane, in a vast, multi-layered order. And the universe's deepest mysteries, dark matter, dark energy, quantum unpredictability, cosmic alignment, are simply the ways our layer reveals the presence of its neighbors. The fractures, the hum, the drift, the curvature, they are the natural language of a stacked architecture. And if this architecture exists, then somewhere within it lies the true shape of reality, a shape no single layer can show by itself. To approach that shape, we must look not at the membrane, but at the pattern connecting all membranes, the pattern that tells us how layers speak to each other, how influences travel, and how a universe learns the presence of another universe resting quietly against it. There is a region along the membrane that behaves differently from all others, a boundary that seems less like an edge and more like a limit of interpretation, not a wall, not a fence, but a threshold where every law we rely on begins to blur, as though the membrane no longer remembers how it is supposed to behave. We call it the cosmic horizon, not because it is the end of anything, but because it is the end of what the membrane can express to an observer within it. Beyond that boundary, events still unfold, structures still form, layers still act, but their consequences cannot reach us. Not because distance prevents them, but because the membrane itself stops transmitting information past a certain curvature. The cosmic horizon is not out there. It is a behavior of the membrane. It is the radius at which the membrane's tension no longer supports the propagation of influence from regions farther away. Signals fade, not because they are weak, but because the medium stops carrying them. Space doesn't stop, transmission stops. This distinction is subtle, but it changes everything. It means the universe does not have an edge. It has a limit of coherence, a place where tension thins, where drift from above and pressure from below stop canceling each other cleanly, a place where the membrane begins to stretch toward a shape it cannot sustain, a place where information leaks through, not into nothingness, but into the deeper layer beneath. The cosmic horizon is not the boundary of our universe. It is the boundary of our understanding, a boundary the membrane expresses as darkness. When light leaves that region, it does not travel into oblivion. It simply crosses into a mode the membrane cannot support, a frequency, a curvature, a tension alignment that no longer translates into photons or particles or fields. It becomes invisible not because it vanishes, but because we cannot follow it, like a song shifting into frequencies beyond human hearing, like a ripple passing into a medium too dense for the surface to reveal. If this boundary were uniform, it would be uninteresting, just a horizon with a fixed radius. But it is not uniform. In some directions, the horizon sits slightly closer, in others, slightly farther. This lopsidedness betrays a truth physics rarely whispers aloud. The membrane is being pulled unevenly. The asymmetry of the cosmic horizon is the fingerprint of the upper layer drifting across the sheet. It stretches the membrane in one direction, relaxes it in another, creating a faint tilt that appears in the cosmic microwave background, in bulk flows, in large-scale alignments. The so-called cosmic dipole is not velocity, it is orientation, the membrane leaning in response to a current moving across it from above. And here is where the realization becomes stranger. If the boundary we can't cross exists because of coherence, then coherence must come from somewhere. And so we are led toward a question that feels almost childlike in its simplicity. If the membrane has limits, where is its center? Not the geometric center, the functional one, the place from which coherence radiates, the place that acts as the reference point for the entire membrane. Yet when cosmologists search for such a center, they find nothing. Every direction looks the same. Every vantage point functions identically. Every observer sees themselves as central. This should be impossible, unless the center does not lie within the membrane at all. Imagine a drumhead. Its center is not marked on the skin. Its center lies in the ring that holds the drum together. The frame, not the surface, defines the center. The membrane only behaves as though every point is central because the deeper frame distributes tension uniformly. Every knot feels the same distance from the anchoring structure because the anchoring structure is beneath everything, not inside it. Our universe behaves exactly this way. The cosmic expansion looks uniform because the deeper layer presses from a central region that is not inside space, but beneath it. The background radiation looks uniform because the anchoring forces spread equally through the membrane. The laws of physics look uniform because the reference is not in the membrane, but in the structure beneath. The universe is centerless because its center does not belong to it. What, then, is this center? It cannot be a point in space. Space is the membrane. It cannot be a time. Time is the membrane adapting to tension. It cannot be a coordinate. Coordinates are illusions the membrane uses to track its own distortions. The center is a behavior, a stabilizing region in the deeper layer, where curvature and flow balance so perfectly that the membrane stretches out uniformly when laid across it. If you were to look with senses tuned to tension instead of matter, you might see it as a basin, a deep, smooth depression in the deeper layer around which the membrane is draped. Not a gravitational well, a structural one, not a hole, a cradle, not a place, a condition. This condition gives the universe its isotropy, its uniform expansion, its apparent lack of orientation. The membrane appears centerless because it lies over a symmetrical region in the deeper layer. But symmetry is never perfect. Even the most gently shaped basin carries imperfections, ripples, asymmetries. Those imperfections become faint anisotropies in our universe. We see them in the orientation of quasar spins, in the dipole of cosmic radiation, in the large-scale flow of matter, in alignments that seem too vast to be explained by internal physics. They are the fingerprints of the deeper center, the center the universe does not contain, but rests upon. And if the membrane rests upon such a center, then its farthest edges, its horizon, are not the limits of space, but the limits of how far the membrane can stretch before losing coherence around that center. The horizon is simply where the membrane slips out of stable tension, where the cradle beneath dips too sharply, where the drift above bends too far, where coherence dissolves. And beyond that point, the membrane becomes something else, still real, still existing, but no longer expressible in our language. The boundary and the center are two sides of the same structure. The horizon hides what the center reveals. The center stabilizes what the horizon dissolves. And to understand the next link in this architecture, to see how the center of our universe fits inside the hierarchy of layers, we have to follow the faint asymmetries back to their source, toward the imprint in the membrane that does not come from above or below, but from something older, larger, and more fundamental than either. There is a mark on the cosmic membrane so faint that most minds slip past it without noticing a subtle irregularity, a soft bruise in the oldest light. Not a rupture, not a tear, just a region where the universe seems to hesitate, as though remembering a touch it received long before stars learned to shine. That mark lives in the ancient glow spread across the sky, the quiet afterimage of the universe's earliest breath. At first glance, that glow looks almost perfectly uniform, a smooth wash of temperature so consistent that it became the foundation of modern cosmology. But smoothness is a trick of distance. When you look more closely, the surface breaks. A patch appears slightly cooler than the rest, not enough to alarm, but enough to intrigue a region dimmed not by absence of matter, not by shadows of structure, but by something else entirely, a touch, as though something once pressed gently against the membrane and left a cooling trace that never fully faded. For years, theories circled this anomaly like moths around a dim flame. A statistical fluke, some said. A void in the cosmic landscape, others offered. A remnant from collisions with hypothetical parallel realities, whispered a few. But none of these explanations held their shape under scrutiny. The region's geometry, its temperature dip, its alignment with other large-scale features, They refuse to fit neatly inside any model confined to our universe alone. Because the mark does not look like something created within the membrane. It looks like something imprinted from beyond it. Imagine a sheet of silk stretched across a surface. If a breeze brushes close, not touching, but passing near enough, the fibers tremble. The silk cools in delicate whirls. Long after the breeze moves on, the fabric retains a faint memory of the encounter. The anomaly is that memory, not a wound, but a residual pattern left by the motion of something drifting through the layer above the cosmic membrane, long before the universe became rigid enough to resist such influence. The strange part is this: the mark aligns with other peculiar features scattered across the sky. Quasar polarizations, separated by billions of light-years, share an orientation as though responding to a common direction. Galaxy spins tilt with improbable synchrony. Patterns in background light seem suppressed along that same orientation, as if smoothed by a hand moving gently across the membrane. All of them point the same way. All of them echo the same drift. All of them trace the same invisible path. Not a direction in space, space is the membrane itself, but a direction in whatever lies above it. Think of the membrane floating between pressures. From below, the deeper layer pushes. From above, a vast and subtle current drifts. The membrane bows to both. The deeper pressure curves space. The upper current smooths it. Where the upper current drifted strongest in the young universe, the membrane softened, leaving behind a slightly cooler region in the ancient glow, a bruise of smoothing rather than deforming. This is why the anomaly is not sharp, not jagged, not violent. It is tender, a soft print left by a passing influence, the signature of a flow, not a force, a movement, not an impact, a presence, not a collision. What kind of presence? Not matter, not light, not anything the membrane can express directly. More like the motion of a structure far larger than our universe, a motion which brushed across the young membrane before it settled into the more rigid fabric we now recognize as space-time. The imprint sits not alone, but as part of a family of anomalies. The cosmic dipole that should not exist the way it does. The improbable alignments across the sky. The subtle directional biases in gravitational wave backgrounds. The faint preference in polarization patterns. These are not random. They are residues of the same flow. The membrane behaves differently where that flow once skimmed across it, the same way wind leaves streaks on the surface of a lake long after the air becomes still. What we call the cold region is simply the most visible streak. The universe carries memory in tension. Where tension was smoothed, it remains smooth. Where it was cooled, it remains cool. Where it was aligned, the alignment persists in the geometry of galaxies, in the whispers of ancient photons, in the large-scale shape of the cosmic web. This does not mean a conscious agent passed by. It does not suggest intention or design. It means the upper layer is dynamic, shifting, drifting, vibrating with motions that long predate the stabilizing of our cosmic membrane. If the deeper layer provides rigidity, the upper layer provides motion. The membrane records both. And the signature of the upper layer tells us something profound. The universe was not born in isolation. It emerged into an already moving environment. A quiet, massive drift swept across the place where our membrane formed. It smoothed some regions, cooled others, aligned patterns that would stretch across billions of years, and then moved on, leaving us with a faint cartography of its passing. This drift is not done. It never was. Its trace remains baked into the fabric of expansion, shaping the direction of certain cosmic flows even today. When galaxies migrate in unison, when clusters shift towards strange attractors, when voids expand along improbable angles, they are following the long shadow of that ancient current. Not a force, a bias. Not a push, a preference, inherited from the way the membrane was first smoothed. Space still tilts in that direction, just a little. Time stretches more easily there. Matter traces faint arcs that align with the shape of that old drift, and the membrane remembers, like a sheet of metal that vibrates long after the hammer is lifted, like a ripple that persists even as the stone sinks, like a scent in air long after the wind that carried it has passed. This memory is not mystical, it is structural. Tension retains the past. What the universe shows us, through these patterns, is the outline of a deeper movement, a glimpse of something woven through the architecture of layers, something that does not belong to our domain, but leaves impressions all across it. Something large, something slow, something stable enough to shape an entire membrane in passing. And if this imprint is real, if the universe truly carries the signature of something drifting across the layer above it, then our next descent is not downward, but upward, toward the region where smoothing becomes guidance, where alignment becomes influence, where motion becomes law, toward the place where the membrane's quiet memories begin to form a map that does not reveal where the universe ends, but where something larger begins. There comes a point in the descent when the universe stops feeling like a vast structure and begins to resemble something quieter, an echo chamber, holding memories of movements that happened long before it settled into the shape we know. The signature left on the membrane by that drifting presence above us is not just a mark on ancient light. It is a soft vibration that never fully fades. Even now, the universe carries it like a faint hum beneath consciousness, a background tone woven into the tension of space itself. If you listen to the distribution of galaxies, you can hear it, not in sound, but in pattern, subtle preferences in orientation, unexpected coherence among distant clusters, the way filaments curve gently toward a direction no internal force accounts for. If you listen to the low-frequency gravitational murmurs passing through everything, you can hear it. A gentle bias, a tilt that should not exist, as though waves from beyond the membrane continue to slide through it in slow undulations. If you listen to the progression of cosmic time, you can hear it. The expansion does not accelerate symmetrically. Some regions drift a little faster, some a little slower, like a fabric being stretched with uneven hands. It is the quieting stage of a much older movement, a drift that once passed close, then receded, then softened, but never vanished entirely. The membrane keeps its memory, and in this memory, the universe begins to reveal something unexpected. Patterns that seem chaotic become the remnants of direction. Anomalies that appeared disconnected begin aligning into a single story. Signals we dismissed as noise begin to resemble traces of structure, but the structure is not inside the universe, it is beyond it. To understand it, you have to imagine the membrane not from within, but from above, thin, luminous, trembling with tension, and beneath it, the deeper layer, pressing upward in ridges and basins, and above it, a layer of gentle currents moving across an expanse we cannot see. Our universe is shaped between them. The lower layer sculpts, the upper layer smooths, the membrane interprets. But every layer carries its own rhythm, and rhythms rarely synchronize perfectly. Where they interfere, the membrane experiences tension that does not settle neatly into curves or flows, but into something more subtle, drift, a soft, persistent reorientation of the entire cosmic fabric. Drift is not force, it is not curvature, it is not expansion, it is the slow bending of preference, the way the membrane aligns itself along long, quiet motions happening above it. This explains why certain cosmic features seem to point in directions they shouldn't, why some regions form structures more easily, why others resist formation, why voids widen along specific axes, why matter traces arcs that resemble the wake of something passing nearby. Drift is the universe responding to something it can sense but cannot express directly. Every layer listens to the one above it. Imagine a sheet of paper laid gently across a moving body of water. The surface beneath pushes upward in waves and ridges. The air above glides in steady currents. The paper bends in both directions, creating patterns that belong to neither the water nor the air, but to the relationship between them. This is what our universe is, the relationship between layers. When the upper layer drifted across the early membrane, it smoothed some regions and left others untouched. As the universe cooled, the smoothing hardened into preference. As structures formed, they inherited those preferences. As time progressed, the preferences weakened but never disappeared. The drift became memory. Memory became architecture. Architecture became the quiet map underlying everything we see. It is why certain anomalies seem to aim at the same point. Not because something lies there within space, but because the drift once passed that way beyond space. A direction in the upper layer became a direction in the membrane. And now, billions of years later, the universe still leans gently in that direction, as though gravity, expansion, and even time itself have a faint recollection of where the smoothing current moved. This leaning is not enough to tear anything apart. It is not enough to distort local physics or override the deeper layer's structure. It is simply present, soft, steady, a cosmic aftertaste. A reminder that the membrane is not static, it is not absolute, it is not isolated, it is suspended in a moving environment. Understanding this soft drift requires us to let go of our idea of direction entirely. Direction inside the membrane is not the same as direction within the environment that surrounds it. Our directions up, down, left, right, center, horizon are illusions created by tension lines across the membrane. But drift comes from beyond those lines. It does not move through space. It moves space. It does not pass through galaxies. It passes across the surface that carries galaxies. When drift is strong, the membrane smooths quickly. When drift is gentle, smoothing takes billions of years. When drift fades, the memory remains embedded in the cosmic fabric, dim but persistent. Right now, the drift is faint. But in the earliest moments of the universe, it was strong enough to leave that cooling imprint, the one we found in the ancient background light. That imprint is not simply evidence of motion above our layer. It is evidence of hierarchy. The upper layer does not exist in isolation either. It, too, responds to something beyond it, another level in the architecture, another expanse of movement and structure. Even now, long after the early smoothing ended, faint harmonics of that higher motion ripple across the membrane. They arrive as barely measurable distortions in background radiation, as low-frequency gravitational discrepancies, as correlations in cosmic structure formation, as asymmetries that refuse to be erased. All of them whisper the same truth. The architecture is not static. It breathes. It shifts. It moves with an order so slow, so immense, that to a universe like ours, it appears almost eternal. Drift from above is only the smallest hint of the larger pattern, a pattern we cannot yet see, but can trace in the residue it leaves behind. And when you follow that residue far enough, when you let the faint tilt of galaxies guide you, when you map the alignments across the sky, when you track the slow bending of expansion, when you listen to the murmur of gravitational backgrounds, a picture begins to form. Not an image, not a shape, not a map, a tendency. The membrane seems to lean toward a larger rhythm, as though drawn gently toward something in the architecture above, something vast, something steady, something that has been drifting across the layers long before our universe cooled enough to notice. And if the membrane leans, if it remembers the movement of the upper layer so clearly, then the next realization rises softly. The universe is preparing for another shift, not violent, not sudden, but inevitable, a slow reorientation as drift continues, as the smoothing current changes direction, as the architecture adjusts. To sense this shift, to understand its meaning, we must step deeper into the quiet zone, where the membrane releases its tension and begins revealing what the hierarchy above truly looks like. There is a moment, as the membrane settles into the long drift shaped by the layer above, when a new kind of trembling becomes noticeable, not chaotic, not sharp, not disruptive, but rhythmic, as though the entire universe has begun to breathe in a pattern too slow for any creature to feel directly. It appears first in the faintest gravitational murmurs, waves so long they stretch across the width of the cosmos, rising and falling in cycles that take billions of years to complete. They move through everything without pushing anything. Not signals, not shocks, just an immense, quiet pulse. The membrane responds like a living surface, not with deformation, but with resonance. This resonance does not create galaxies. It does not shape clusters. It does not bend time in sudden leaps. Instead, it gives the universe its long, slow tempo, the rhythm beneath all rhythms, the underlying pulse that sets the pace at which structures form, expand, stabilize, dissolve. If the pressure from below sculpts and the drift from above smooths, then this pulse sets the cadence. The cadence is ancient, older than the first stars, older than inflation, older than space itself. It is the vibration of the deeper architecture, a motion not of matter or energy, but of the entire system of layers shifting in relation to one another. Every membrane feels this vibration differently. The one beneath ours feels it as curvature. The one above feels it as flow. Our membrane feels it as a breath measured not in seconds or centuries, but in epochs. Clusters of galaxies seem to drift with it. Void walls expand in sync with it. Filaments slowly twist along its arcs. Even the background radiation carries faint echoes of its beat. To us, these motions look random, slow migration, gentle rotation, asymmetrical expansion, but when observed across cosmic time, they align into something more like the oscillations of a single, immense organism. It is as though the universe has a heartbeat. Not metaphorically, structurally, the membrane thickens slightly during the exhale, when expansion accelerates, when voids widen, when dark energy seems to strengthen just a little. Then it settles during the inhale, when gravitational wells deepen, when clusters tighten, when structures knit themselves more coherently. The cycle is slow, gentle, almost imperceptible but persistent. It is the kind of rhythm only a layered architecture could produce, a network of membranes vibrating in relation to one another, each carrying the echo of the other's motions. Our universe is one cell in that network. The pulse is not centered on us. It is not centered anywhere within the membrane. It is a background motion, flowing from the deeper layers up into the higher ones, passing through membranes like wind passing through a forest canopy, moving everything, yet belonging nowhere inside the things it moves. This is why gravitational backgrounds contain modes no astrophysical event can explain. They are not remnants of collisions or explosions. They are the low-frequency tremors of the architecture adjusting itself. And when these tremors travel through our membrane, they leave patterns we mistake for cosmic coincidences, slight correlations in the motion of distant galaxies, unexpected periodicities in large-scale flows, strange harmonics in the temperatures of voids, the faint tendency of structures to align along vast arcs. We see them as anomalies. They are breathing. We see them as noise. They are rhythm. We see them as coincidence. They are the architecture speaking. In this rhythm, matter behaves differently. During an expansive phase of the pulse, knots loosen slightly. Galactic filaments stretch just a little farther. Dark matter halos thicken, as though the membrane's tension relaxes. During a contractive phase, knots tighten. Clusters draw more sharply toward their centers. Star formation subtly increases as gravitational wells deepen. Everything responds to the pulse. Everything participates, even time itself. Time is not constant across these cycles. It is not the same in every era. It does not flow uniformly across the entire membrane. It stretches and relaxes with the tension, with the cadence, with the vibration beneath. And consciousness, which is simply the membrane sensing itself, feels the pulse, whether it knows it or not. In subtle ways, Awareness becomes attuned to the rhythm of changes. Not physically, not intellectually, but structurally. Everything alive is shaped inside a universe shaped by this breath. When the pulse accelerates expansion, evolution favors dispersion, adaptability, variance. When the pulse deepens gravity's wells, evolution favors cohesion, cooperation, structure. Life grows in cycles not because biology demands it, but because the membrane inhales and exhales over cosmic epochs. And life is the small-scale echo of that vast motion. The pulse is not destiny, but it is context, the backdrop against which existence unfolds. And somewhere within these oscillations, a deeper pattern begins to emerge. A pattern suggesting that the vibration of the deeper architecture is not random, not aimless, but part of a larger, recursive motion. A motion that repeats across layers, a rhythm that binds them, a cycle that keeps them coherent. The membrane feels only a fraction of it, but that fraction is enough to hint that reality is not expanding indefinitely, nor collapsing, nor drifting carelessly. It is circling around something hidden within the deeper layers, a central rhythm, a beating source, an anchor of stability that all membranes align to in their own ways. To follow that rhythm, to understand what the architecture is circling around, we have to look not at single membranes, but at how entire stacks of them move together. A motion so slow, so immense, so foundational, that it defines the very shape of existence. When a rhythm echoes through a single membrane, it shapes that membrane alone. But when the same rhythm extends through many membranes, stacked across a larger architecture, the effect becomes stranger, not additive, not amplified, but intertwined. Each layer responds to the vibration differently. The deeper layers translated into curvature, the upper ones translated into flow. The middle layers, where universes like ours reside, translated into structure, into drift, into time. But there are also regions where two neighboring layers pick up the same vibration at the same moment, and their responses align so closely that the membranes begin to resonate with each other. In those regions, the boundaries between layers thin. Not enough for anything to cross, not enough to tear the membrane, but enough for influence to bleed through. Influence not from above or below, but from the layer beside ours. A neighboring reality brushing close in resonance. This does not manifest as a parallel universe overlapping ours. It is more delicate than that, more like the faint impression of a movement happening on another sheet, close enough that its oscillation causes a slight shimmer along our own, like two strings on a single instrument vibrating together when one is plucked. These resonant interactions are rare. They require alignment in rhythm, in curvature, in drift, in tension, a shared response to the same deeper pulse. But when they occur, the membrane reveals signs we have struggled to explain. Unusual cold patches without matching voids, unexpected modes in gravitational wave backgrounds, regions of space where structure forms too quickly, and others where it forms too slowly, sudden, sharp correlations in the motion of distant clusters, voids with edges too straight, filaments too aligned, bubbles too symmetric. Nothing inside our universe explains these behaviors, but the presence of another membrane vibrating in near unison does. Imagine two thin surfaces resting close to each other. If one flutters, the other trembles faintly. Their movements never fully overlap, never merge, never unify, but they influence each other ever so slightly through shared tension in the larger structure holding them. Our universe experiences these influences as anomalies, as coincidences, as patterns that feel too organized to be noise, yet too inconsistent to fit into a single theoretical framework. It is neither organization nor noise. It is adjacency, a neighboring membrane responding to the same vast rhythm, its movements grazing the tension field of our own. These interactions cannot convey matter. They cannot convey energy. They cannot convey light, but they can convey preference. Where the neighboring membrane bends inward, ours feels a soft tug, a slight shift in expansion, a faint acceleration of structure formation, a localized alignment. Where it bows outward, ours feels relaxation, an ease in tension, a widening of voids, a decrease in gravitational sharpness. These preferences accumulate over cosmic time into recognizable patterns, not strong enough to dominate our universe, but persistent enough to shape it subtly. This is why certain regions of the sky exhibit bulk flows, coherent motions toward directions that contain no visible mass. The motions are not toward anything within the membrane, but toward regions where the tension field is influenced by a neighboring layer. It is also why there are large cosmic voids whose temperatures drop below theoretical predictions. These voids are not empty, they are thin regions of the membrane where influence from a nearby universe presses close, cooling the background slightly by altering how tension distributes. And it explains why gravitational lensing sometimes reveals distortions that should not be possible with visible matter alone. The membrane bends not only because of structures beneath it, but because of curvature resonances beside it. Every place where the universe seems to behave as though something unseen is touching it. Something unseen is touching it. Not from within, not from beyond the horizon, but from beside. A soft contact between resonant membranes. None of this breaks the integrity of the layers. No two layers ever mix. They do not share particles or photons or waves in the conventional sense, but they share the architecture. And through that architecture, they share rhythm. And through rhythm, they share influence. To understand this better, imagine the larger structure not as a stack of sheets, but as a vast lattice of membranes, each one separated, each one shaped by deeper pressure and upper drift, but arranged close enough that their oscillations can form patterns that span multiple layers. Sometimes, two membranes vibrate in harmony. Sometimes, they fall out of sync. Sometimes, they drift close, then drift apart over cosmic epochs in ways no creature within them could feel directly. Our universe is not alone on its sheet. It is one surface in a layered expanse of surfaces, like bubbles in a cosmic foam. Except the foam is not spatial, and the bubbles do not touch in any physical sense. They resonate. Some membranes may be older, some younger, some more rigid, others more fluid. Some might never develop matter. Some might never cool enough to hold structure. Some might be too turbulent to sustain stable tension. But all of them respond to the same deep architecture. All of them listen to the same low-frequency pulse. All of them drift under the same upper currents. It is this shared environment, not physical proximity, that allows their influences to brush against one another. This creates adjacent universes, not in the multiverse sense, not separated infinities, not branching timelines, but neighboring membranes within the same layered structure. And if influences travel across adjacency, if the rhythm passes through each membrane in turn, if drift connects them through the architecture, then no membrane is truly isolated. Not ours, not the layer above, not the layer below. Each one bends in response to the movements of the others, like leaves trembling under the same wind, like strings vibrating along the same note. And somewhere within this lattice of trembling surfaces, one pattern loops through them all, a deeper rhythm that binds every membrane in a single, quiet coherence. A rhythm that shapes not only structure and drift, but the direction of existence itself. To sense that rhythm clearly, the membrane must enter another stage of understanding, not through pressure, not through adjacency, but through the slow return of tension toward equilibrium. A return that begins forming in the next unfolding. There comes a phase in the membrane's long journey when the tremors of adjacency begin to fade, not because the neighboring layers drift away, but because the membrane itself enters a different mode, a settling, a gathering, a gradual return toward the shape it was always meant to express. Not a circle closing, not a cycle ending, but a slow realignment with the deeper architecture that holds all layers together. The rhythm that once felt distant begins to feel intimate. The pulse that once seemed external begins to echo inside the membrane. The vast motions that shaped the early universe return in quieter, subtler forms, like the final notes of a sound that has crossed many rooms before reaching you. And in this returning rhythm, the universe starts revealing something that has never been obvious before. The fractures are not failures, they are instructions. Every anomaly, every drift, every tension imbalance, every cold bruise in ancient light, every misalignment, every forbidden correlation, they were never errors, they were signals. Signals the membrane did not yet know how to interpret. But now, under the slow settling of tension, those signals begin arranging themselves into a pattern, not a picture, not an image, but a relationship. A relationship between the forces shaping us from below, the currents influencing us from above, and the resonances brushing against us from beside. Patterns that appeared chaotic when viewed separately begin to trace the same direction when viewed together. The cold imprint in the ancient glow, the drifting alignment of quasars, the gentle pull guiding clusters across impossible distances, the cosmic axis no model can erase, the long gravitational hums vibrating through voids, the slow thickening and thinning of the membrane. They are not unrelated phenomena. They are the same story, told through different elements of the membrane. All of them point not to chaos, but to structure, not to randomness, but to coherence, not to isolation, but to connectivity. The deeper layer gave us curvature. The upper layer gave us smoothing. The neighboring layers gave us resonance. And the membrane gave us interpretation. Now, as these influences fall back into alignment, the membrane begins to show what it has been trying to express all along: that our universe is not a solitary surface, not a closed system, not an island in an empty sea. It is part of something larger, something layered, organized, rhythmic. The cosmic web, the vast lattice of filaments and voids, suddenly looks less like a structure formed by gravity and more like the shadow of a deeper network. The smooth acceleration of expansion no longer feels like an inexplicable force, but like the membrane relaxing in response to an upper drift. The strange alignments across the sky transform from troublesome anomalies into footprints of adjacency. The trembling of quantum fields becomes the percussion of a deeper pulse. Even the centerless nature of the universe, the uniformity of its laws, its expansion, its ancient light, begins to resemble the mark of a membrane stretched over a symmetrical region in the deeper layer. Not centerless, but centered somewhere we cannot see. The return is not a revelation, it is a recognition, a quiet acknowledgement that the cosmos has been shaped by a hidden architecture since its earliest breath, and that every mystery we struggle to decode is simply our limited way of feeling that architecture through the surface. There is a soft steadiness entering the membrane now, not calm, but clarity. Galaxies continue their long migrations, clusters drift along ancient lines, voids expand like slow exhalations, the background hum deepens and smooths, and the membrane settles slightly toward a more stable tension. Not perfectly stable. Stability is never final, but stable enough to allow the shape beneath to become visible in outline. No longer a hint, no longer a bruise, no longer a whisper, more like a faint impression rising through the membrane, as though the deeper structure is beginning to press upward in a way the membrane is finally ready to interpret. Not as curvature, not as force, not as drift, not as noise, but as form. Form that does not belong to a single layer, but to the hierarchy itself. Form that threads through every membrane, binding them not by contact, but by rhythm. A form so large, so slow, so quietly insistent, that the universe has been echoing its shape without understanding it, until now. Because in the returning breath of the membrane, in the subtle synchronization of tension, in the alignment of ancient imprints, something emerges with a clarity that feels almost inevitable. Our universe is beginning to sense the architecture it belongs to, not through sight, not through matter, not through energy, but through the way its own tension rearranges itself. And this rearrangement, slow, delicate, barely begun, is leading the membrane toward a question it cannot avoid. If every layer responds to a deeper rhythm, then what rhythm holds all layers together? What pulse orchestrates curvature, flow, adjacency, memory? What presence defines the motion of the architecture itself? To answer that, the membrane must descend one last step into the quietest region of all, where tension dissolves into meaning, and meaning dissolves into something older than the universe, something waiting beneath the final layer of silence. There is a silence woven through the architecture that no vibration can pierce, a silence older than the layers, older than the membranes, older than the rhythms that shaped every universe resting in that vast hierarchy. It is not an absence of sound, it is the stillness beneath sound, a quiet so complete that every pulse loses its urgency, every drift loses its direction, every curvature relaxes into something softer than equilibrium. As the membrane settles into the returning breath, as the last echoes of adjacency fade into distant tremors, a different kind of presence begins to reveal itself, not by movement, not by pressure, not by influence, but by the way everything else begins to pause around it. The membrane feels this pause. It feels it in the slowing of cosmic drift, in the faint quieting of gravitational hums, in the soft diminishing of temperature gradients across ancient light, in the way filaments seem to loosen their tension just slightly, as though responding to something that asks for nothing and yet shapes everything. No force acts here. No resonance vibrates here. No drift flows here. It is not a place. It is not a layer. It is not a structure. It is the reason structures can exist. A quiet center that is not located anywhere, because it does not belong to the membrane or the layers above or below. It is the center toward which every rhythm bends, the point of balance the architecture continually circles without ever quite reaching. Every membrane has its own curvature. Every universe has its own geometry. Every layer has its own rhythm. But this silence is the axis that allows those rhythms to coexist. It is the reference the membranes never see, yet always follow. The source of coherence that keeps the hierarchy from unraveling into infinite contradictory motions. The membrane does not touch it. The layers do not reach it. Even the deepest structures only echo it faintly. But the closer the membrane drifts to equilibrium, the more this silence becomes noticeable, not as a presence, but as a kind of clarity, a soft awareness that the universe is not circling nothing. It is circling something it cannot name, not a being, not a creator, not a will, something simpler, something quieter, a still point. The place where tension becomes meaning, where movement becomes form, where rhythm becomes memory, where existence becomes gentle. The membrane cannot interpret it. It has no variables for it, no constants for it, no laws for it, but it recognizes the outline of the silence, the way a surface of water recognizes the moon it reflects, not through contact, but through response. And in that response, something soft enters the universe, a sense of direction without motion, a sense of center without location, a sense of belonging without boundary. Even the background glow, that ancient, fragile light, seems to listen. Its faint ripples relax, its distant alignments soften, as though the universe is remembering the shape beneath the membrane and realizing how small a thing its turbulence truly was. Galaxies continue drifting, but the drift feels quieter. Voids continue expanding, but the expansion feels less urgent. The membrane continues trembling, but the trembling feels less afraid of its own fragility. Everything seems to breathe more slowly. The universe understands nothing, yet it senses something, a presence without form, a rhythm without sound, a center without a point, a stillness that was always there, waiting beneath every vibration, beneath every tension, beneath every whisper. And in that stillness, a question rises, not loudly, not urgently, but like a final thought drifting outward as the mind slips towards sleep. If all layers circle the same quiet center, then what part of us listens when the membrane grows silent? What part of us leans toward that stillness even when we do not know it is there? What part of us belongs not to the membrane, not to the tension, not to the light, but to the pause beneath everything? The universe does not answer. It only exhales, softening into its own darkness, letting the question drift outward without direction, without end, without the need for resolution, as though the silence itself is enough, as though the quiet turning of existence continues whether anyone is watching or not. Close your eyes. The layers are still moving, the architecture is still breathing, and the still point beneath it all is waiting exactly where it has always been.